Hello and welcome to Don't Feed the Geeks, presented by the Long Island Comic Guys, the masters of the geeky verse. Yeah. Today we have myself, TC, Toy Story, the Dungeon Master, JJ,
Woohoo!
Bojo,
hello,
and a special guest and also a friend, Alan G, longtime comic collector, maybe comic grader on the side, comic historian. Why don't you say hello there, Alan?
Gentlemen, thank you.
Welcome, sir.
How you doing, Alan?
It's been a long 5 weeks, but I'm doing okay.
Awesome.
Hopefully we can talk some comics and just relax.
Yeah, just kind of pinch me if you see me dozing off.
We'll
but
do.
I should
That's
be
all
okay.
good.
Absolutely.
Stab you with the metal pencil.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate that.
First, we steal all
Wonderful
his books,
human being.
and then do that.
Yes.
But you can't have the IRS.
We'll get
later. That would be the first one taken.
Yeah, Alan brought a special show and tell item, which we're not gonna, we can't show, but we'll tell.
There you go.
Post a picture.
We'll show later. Yeah.
There you go.
But how about we start with a little geek news from Mr. Toy Story
Absolutely.
over here.
Not too much since last time, but we'll get into it. In a last-ditch effort to beat out James Cameron's Avatar as the highest-grossing film of all time, Marvel and Disney are re-releasing Avengers Endgame in select theaters this weekend. The film will feature a video introduction by director Anthony Russo, plus an unfinished deleted scene and a special first look at Spider-Man Homecoming, which comes out next week. Fans who buy a ticket will also receive an exclusive piece of Avengers art featuring an illustration of Tony Stark's Nano Gauntlet. Avengers Endgame currently sits at just over $2.75 billion in revenue and needs to make around $36 million more to beat out Avatar and secure its place at the top of the list.
Do we think it's going to happen?
You do a great job
It's
reading.
I don't.
You're a great reader.
I personally think that it's irrelevant because it was already pulled from the original release. So
It
any
still counts
revenue,
towards it, though.
any revenue from this weekend should not be added to its
You also
total.
have to realize that the Avatar was across 42 weeks. That revenue that they're pulling it from. This
But-
has been what, 16?
Yeah,
So they shouldn't have pulled.
I think it's a great idea.
they do.
I hope
You know
I
how
hope
the
they pass
Phantom
it?
Menace was re-released in 3D a couple years ago?
Mhm, yeah.
That went towards the total
Yeah,
and
really?
moved it up on the list. Yeah,
That's funny.
I know. Do you think it's going to beat it?
I hope it does. I don't want to hear about Avatar anymore. Avatar doesn't matter. You know what's going to be great? The second movie is going to crash and burn, I guarantee you.
The second
Crash and
Avatar?
burn. Yeah.
What
It's-
about the 3, 4, and 5?
6, 7, 8.
Wait and see.
Don't care about it.
Yeah. Well, I hope it does. That's about all I wanted to contribute to that, unless anyone else
Alright.
does.
Nope,
else?
don't care.
Moving on.
I just want to point out that it's Spider-Man Far From Home, not Spider-Man Homecoming.
I am so sorry.
It's all good.
Wow.
Sorry. Just
Shut you down.
Jeez, I had to throw me under the bus.
I
Like
just
We
you know,
we
need-
appreciate that, Bojo.
And we're-
yeah, thank you.
Toy Story, you can go home.
And we're gonna
Would you
keep.
like to read the next one?
I could.
Go for it. Let's hear the best radio
Ooh.
voice.
I don't know about best. So the filmmaker responsible for breathing life into the Star Wars universe, or sucking the life out of it, depending on who you ask, is going to be trying his hand at comic book writing. J.J. Abrams, along with his son Henry Abrams, will be teaming up with artist Sarah Pichelli for a new Spider-Man miniseries. The pair are introducing a brand new villain to the Marvel Universe called Cadaverous in the 5-part miniseries, which will arrive this September.
That was beautiful.
That
Yeah,
was
that
awesome.
that was much better.
You
You can
know-
take over.
Yeah, he was
Oh.
his better radio voice.
You just write it. He'll read it.
Yeah.
Sorry, Toy Story. So I think this is kind of cool. This was like the big countdown that they had online. They did like the 4, the 3, the 2, the 1.
And really screwed everybody up because
Yeah.
everybody thought totally something different.
Everyone actually had some really good ideas too. I love the idea that maybe they was going to do like the Sam Raimi Toy Story, not Toy Story 4, Spider-Man 4, like as a comic book. Like I would read that.
I wouldn't.
Really?
No.
I would.
Oh, come on. I would love to see some of the stuff that
I
was.
never go back and watch those. I'll be honest with you.
Really?
I enjoyed the first one a little bit,
Okay.
and mostly because of Defoe.
Yeah.
Why
The
cover
second-
the chin?
The second one, everyone loves the second one.
It's true.
I mean, if the third one wasn't so terrible, I wouldn't like the second one at all either.
Hmm.
But hey, Spider-Man in the movie
harsh.
theater.
This coming from a Spider-Man fan.
Yeah.
That's why. That's why he's
Spider-Man.
That's why I'm the harshest critic.
Okay, good stuff.
All right.
Keep going.
Keep
Yeah.
going because you're better at this.
All right. So let's talk about Jonathan Hickman's X-Men. Superstar comic book writer Jonathan Hickman has expressed his discontent with the current state of the X-Men universe on Twitter. just a few weeks before he's set to relaunch the Marvel's Band of Mutants. And he wrote, X-Men continuity is some nonsense. There are no rules here. There is no order, just random, unconnected gibberish. Hickman's complaint garnered support from fellow X-Men writers, such as Zach Thompson, one of the masterminds behind the current Age of X-Men event. Hickman, along with artists Pepe Larraz and R.B. Silva, will be relaunching the X-Men, beginning with 2 new miniseries, House of X and Powers of X, which will hit comic shelves by the end of July.
So, 2 things I wanted to hit on.
Sure.
What other? Are you aware of other stuff Hickman's worked on?
Oh, man.
He's done a lot.
Because I'm not really that familiar with him.
All right,
What are his big books?
Hickman's biggest stuff was probably, like, it all led up to Secret Wars. So he started off in independent comics. He was actually
Wait, which Secret Wars?
like the most recent one, the one that reset the Marvel Universe.
Yeah.
So Hickman's rise comes from, he started off doing Fantastic Four around like the 570s, and he did that 3 storyline which killed off Human Torch.
Mm-hmm.
He had a really big, like, cosmic look at the FF. It kind of, he garnered a lot of praise. People felt it was like probably the most sci-fi, big, bombastic ideas on the title since probably Kirby and Lee were on it.
Okay, so nothing good. Gotcha.
I was waiting for that.
Wow. From there, he did Avengers, New Avengers, which led up to Secret Wars, which was pretty cool.
So the second question was, I was a little confused by, is he trying to say that the X-Men don't need to be in like a continuity state, or the current state is
The current
all
state
of
is
this-
garbage.
He's saying
because
that
there's no sense to it.
Agreed.
everything is garbage with their continuity.
It needs to go back to like
Yeah.
Claremont continuity, where everything like connected with each other and it made sense. Like now, it's just I stopped reading it a long time ago because it's just like I don't know what the hell's going on here anymore.
You
Too
know,
many titles too.
Yeah, but when you do that, you realize how
Yeah.
many people will go out and buy.
I know.
Maybe not little
I
kids.
know. That doesn't
but-
make it right.
Listen, if you're trying to run a business, you want people to buy more books, not less, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like you got to think about this from a business point of view.
Yeah, but eventually people are gonna smarten up and
And
realize.
and,
"No,
and
this is
again,
good."
with the X-Men, like it's messed up when you do this with like Spider-Man, because he's one character where you spread him across like 16 books. The X-Men, there's like 1,000 of them. Like you can't fit all the X-Men in one book.
Yeah.
Like you have to spread them around, and that's what is easier to done about the X-Men, because some of them are cool. Like you stick a couple crappy ones with really cool ones, and then you spread them around. Basically what they did in the 90s.
they did that in the 90s. They did that recently with X-Men Red, X-Men Blue, X-Men Gold. I think he's not necessarily wrong. It's kind of it's so.
Oh no, I agree.
Here's the challenge. Here's the fun thing I love to talk about when I talk about comic book continuity and how it can get out of hand. Try explaining Cable to a non-comic reader.
I'm still trying to figure it out. I'm reading through 1993 right now, and I was just like,
Cable
I
is
almost think I kind of know maybe who he is.
Cable is the son of Cyclops and a clone of Jean Grey.
But I don't think he is. I think Strife might be. It's not clear.
Oh my god! Oh,
Apparently, it might be that he's the clone of Strife, or is it the other way? Is Strife the clone of him?
No, he has to be. Strife has to be the clone. Strife has to be the clone of Cable because Cable was infected with the techno-organic virus in X Factor 68 during like the
All right, I'll get it.
Doesn't matter. Regardless, like he has the
I'm gonna stop
techno.
reading. I finally figured out who Cable is.
Whose character's Cable? Who came up with Cable?
Robert Liefeld.
I know. I was trying to cause some controversy.
Of course you were.
Can we just call him Voldemort from now on?
He who shall not be named.
Yeah,
Yeah.
let's just call him Voldemort.
You know who.
All right, cool.
All right, then our last bit of news. Toys R Us lives! The retail chain that was once the largest toy store in the
knew about
United
this.
States.
Mm.
Toys. No wonder Toy Story wrote about this.
Of
So,
course.
the retail chain that was once the largest toy store in the United States will be returning at the end of this year. TRU Kids, the company built out of the remnants of the original Toys R Us, will open up 10 new stores, each about half the size of the originals, and featuring additional interactive experiences for kids. Toys R Us originally closed down all of its stores last year after it had become apparent that there was no feasible way out of the financial trouble that they had gotten themselves into.
Crazy. My wallet's already screaming.
Right before it closed, I walked through the Toys R Us I used to go to back in Little Neck, Queens, and no wonder they went out of business.
Yeah.
It looked exactly the same as when I went into it 20 years ago.
Yep.
Yeah.
I gotta agree. They didn't like update or
Nothing.
keep with the changes. It was like, okay, this is like exactly when I was a teenager.
Yeah.
Yep.
Like the Legos were in the same spot. The action figures were in the same spot.
And it was so damn expensive too.
If they would have still had the toys in there from that era, though, that would have been cooler, though. They would have made more money.
well,
Yeah.
I was like, oh, look, there's still He-Man's in the box here. I'll just pick one of these
There you
out.
go. There you go.
All right, that about it.
Yeah, I'll add something.
Yeah, go ahead.
I don't know if anybody saw the video, the Ghostbuster video today. So
Paul
it was
Rudd, right?
Paul Rudd. So it started out with some guy doing a Facebook Live, staring at the firehouse. Where's that at? It's in Brooklyn.
no, it's in the city. You probably know better where
yeah,
it is.
it's in Tribeca area.
Tribeca?
There's a great bar called what's it called? Crap. Whiskey something library. Whiskey Library, Bourbon Library.
Okay.
I think it's something. It's awesome.
All right.
But it's right across the street from there.
So
They have whiskey.
Well, if it's
I'm
called
gonna go into real quick. So it has like one of those. It's basically like I think it's called Bourbon Library or
Ooh.
Bourbon something. But it has all these bottles and stuff like that. Really nice ones. And they have like one of those sliding ladders, like next to them. So like it has like a library feel. And they do these flights. Like they're pretty expensive, but you get like really expensive like alcohol, like tequila. You have a tequila flight that's like a $50 flight. But you have like you get a shot of like tequilas that are like
Oh, so that's
$100
pretty cool.
bottle. Yeah,
I'd
it's
check
cool.
that out.
Yeah,
That's
we
pretty
should all
nice.
go one day. Let's go right now.
shut this down.
Live from the library.
So
Yeah.
So it was a dude, doing a live. I think it was a Facebook Live, and he was pointing it at the firehouse and just talking about it. And then all of a sudden, he turns the camera around and it's Paul Rudd saying,
That's awesome.
you
I didn't
know,
see that.
It was actually pretty cool. So I'm excited to see Paul Rudd because I like him. I just watched that almost 40. What was it? What movie
doesn't
was
age
in?
like
This is 40.
This is 40, and it just I like him as an actor.
So he's the. You ever seen the movie Clueless?
Yeah.
He's the guy
Yeah.
in that. That's how long he's been around.
Yeah.
Like, what year was that movie? Like 1994.
and he looks the same then
And he
as he does
hasn't
now.
changed.
I mean,
He does.
a little bit, yeah. But he's one of those ageless looking guys.
But I'm excited to see him in the new Ghostbusters.
Yeah,
So
he's
pretty cool.
He's just a funny guy.
Nice.
He's the perfect type of personality, like a lot like those other guys to join that show. He's almost like kind of like a little bit of a Dan Aykroyd type. I wouldn't say he's
Ooh.
Bill Murray.
Bill Murray. Bill Murray is like he's just too unique. Like almost like the only other person who's kind of like him is maybe Jack Nicholson, but Jack Nicholson's on a whole nother level.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Cool stuff.
Yeah, that's awesome. Cool
Yeah.
news.
Thank you, Jim.
Yeah.
All right, so jumping from there, we're gonna go right into Mr. Allen's origin story.
Is that my cue?
Are you awake?
Yeah, I'm awake.
Going back.
Okay,
in
what do you
time.
want to know?
We want you to start from the beginning. What was it that got you into this geeky culture? It doesn't necessarily have to be the first comic book you read, but what was the thing that kind of like, hey, this stuff is pretty cool?
Well, to be perfectly honest, if I didn't get sent to detention in the third grade, I never would have been collecting comics.
Yeah, I see.
I was in the back of the classroom flipping baseball cards with a friend of mine. I busted for flipping comics. So comics, God,
Cards.
flip baseball cards. I am tired. Teacher grabbed my cards, said I'm not going to get them back until June 30th, and I have to spend a week in detention. Back then in grammar school, detention was you had to kind of sit in the lunchroom, last table, all the way in the back. You couldn't eat until everybody else ate, and you had to sit by yourself. So, those lunchrooms have those long tables. So I walk over, and I see there's 4 guys sitting at the end of one of the tables, 2 guys on each side, and they had a giant pile of comic books right in the middle. And I knew these guys from my class. They look for me. I walk over, and I'm kind of looking. So they look at me, and they go, hey, you're interested in comic books? I went, yeah, sure. He says, well, you can join our comic club if you want. You can hang out with us. You could read some books, but you have to go and buy 3 to 5 books every couple of weeks, and we trade and share, and
So to interject here, at that time, was that cool or uncool?
we're talking like 1973. That was pretty cool at the time.
Okay.
So that's on the
I'm
madness.
just curious how the culture has changed from time to time.
Well, it was strictly a hobby. It was just something that we did because it was fun. We had, these characters in these books were on TV and cartoons. Every Saturday morning you had on Channel 9 you had the it was a Fantastic Four. You had the Incredible Hulk. It was Spider-Man and I believe
Spider-Man
Captain
and
America.
Friends?
No, it was
that
Spider-Man
one?
and Friends. No, this was like the
That was the 80s.
1967 series, but they
Oh,
played
they
them through
just-
the 70s.
they
Yeah,
just recently gave
yeah,
them
and the
some
animation sucked. There was all that stop motion stuff, you know. So you had something to relate to. You know, you saw them on TV, and they were in a comic book. So I would sit with these guys every day, and I noticed one of the guys was actually sketching a cover, and he was a really good artist. And this is we're talking 10, 11 years old. He was sketching a cover of I think it was it was an early Marvel Tales. I know it was a 20-cent cover. The pile of books on the table, all 20 cent, maybe 25. It might have been. It was either 73 or 74 because I know there were a lot of 20 cent, maybe a couple of 25-cent covers on there. I know there were some 15 centers, and there was a whole pile on the side of all the 60-cent DC thick books, the 100 pages.
Giants.
Yeah, those are
Yeah.
nice. Yeah, those
The
are really
100-page
nice.
giants.
Yeah.
And these were like all off the newsstand. So I would go to my neighborhood, newsstand. I was on. I lived in Brooklyn at the time, so I'd only have like $1. I had no parental support whatsoever as far as hobbies. Anything I wanted, I was given no money. This is all on my own. So
Okay.
I delivered newspapers. I did what I had to do to make a couple of bucks. So, I'm looking at the spinner rack, and I see all these titles, and I'm saying, well, I only have $1. I can only get a few. So, no, I don't buy Spider-Man 129. I don't buy Hulk 181. I say, well, you know what? Marvel Tales has 2 characters. Marvel 2-in-1, Marvel, double feature has Iron Man, and so to get the most out of my $1, I bought those titles because it had more than one character in it, thinking I'm doing the right thing. So I leave the good stuff on the spinner rack, and I bring all these books back to
You never know.
just a handful of books. So I was accepted into this. It was just me and 4 guys into this comic club, and I was trying to find a way where I could find back issues. Again, back then there were hardly any shows. If there were, I didn't know about them. No internet.
Right.
If you were smart enough to get the, there was this publication called the Comic Buyer's Guide.
Right.
And if you got that, then you could sort of know where things were happening as far as the shows were. To me, a show was a foreign thing. I had no clue that there was anything called a comic convention. So I'm walking in my neighborhood, and I saw there was a bookstore. And I just walked over to the bookstore. It was on Brighton Beach Avenue where I used to live. And I saw it said, used books, paperbacks, periodicals, comics. I go in, and it was a family-owned place. It was a really small store, but it was long. And you walk in, it had that paper smell.
Yeah.
You
I
can't
know-
get
I know-
that old.
I'm there
That
just
old
by your
paper
description.
smell was
I
just,
already know what
it was
smells
really
like.
good. I go in, and the guy, he was like a high school guy sitting behind the counter. Must have been the son. And I said, do you have comic books? It says on the sign you have comics. And the guy was like, hey, man, you into comic books, man? One of those kind of guys, So takes me in the back of the store, and they had these big metal racks, the storage racks. And he pulls out this shallow cardboard box, and it was like the size of a double-sized mattress.
Oh my God.
Pulled it out, and it was just loaded with comic books, just back issues.
Sorry,
wow.
sorry, my eyes widening
I was
open
just-
wasn't didn't translate through.
And listen to this. They were
Think all-
12 cents a piece.
Oh my
Just
God.
used back issues, and I just went through them, and
What did you buy? What,
What
did you
happened?
pick up?
That-
Come
that
on, you
action
found
wa-
something good.
That action one was 50 cents, and
there
you
were a
didn't
lot
buy
of
it,
there
didn't
were a
you?
lot of there were a lot of 15 centers. I remember taking all of those. Just basically what this guy would do, he would go to the newsstands and buy whatever wasn't selling, and he did this for a number of years.
Smart.
So things he didn't want, he'd put in this giant box, and I was like the only one who asked for these to see comic books in years. After a while, things caught on, and
Yeah.
it
course.
wasn't easy to get back issues. But that's where I was going for back issues. Now this really impressed my friends. I didn't tell them where I got these books from, and they were like, "Oh wow!" You know.
Yeah, they'd run to your stash.
Yeah. So, but it was funny. With the first time when I went to the store, when I went to the counter to pay the guy, he was reading a copy of a comic book called Trapped. Okay, and we could talk about that in a little bit. It was a promotional comic that was. It was from the early 50s. It was given out to schools. It was like an anti-drug comic book.
Huh.
Yeah, and that was there's a story behind that where it was a scarce book, and then all of a sudden, hordes of it were all over the place, and it just tanked. Yeah, but I remember seeing this comic book, and he told me he got it from his school library. You know, that was it's like I said. There's a story to that book. If you, I can.
So the guy who's called you man.
He's reading. He's like, hey, I'm reading this book on drug abuse, man. You can't get this on the newsstand, man.
That's funny.
Oh my God, that's pretty cool. Is that place still there?
Nah, that
Oh,
place
I had
is
to,
long
I had
gone.
to ask. I figured no, but
But in fact, a block past that store was sort of like a 5 and 10. They used to call them back then, a 5 and 10 shop. It was called Youth World.
5 and dime.
5 and dime, yeah. It was called Youth World, and they had I could see this. They had rows and rows of the original 12-inch Amigos.
Ooh.
Yeah, Spider-Man, or just the stuff that's like $3-4 grand a pop now.
Wow.
It was $2.49 plus tax.
That damn tax.
Too rich for your blood at the time.
Yeah, it's you know.
That's a lot of newspapers being delivered.
Do you have money for tax in elementary school?
Yeah.
So before we get into anything else,
Yeah.
one of the stories that I want you to share is the first time you ever went to something close to a comic book convention. Was it your dad that took you to this one? I forgot the story.
This man guy gave me he had this flyer for this I think it was monthly or bi-monthly show. It was a Sunday show in New York City. It was run by this guy. His name was Phil Suling. He used to be I think he was one of the original guys that was distributing. He was like one of the early distributors in comics. And he used to run these Sunday shows. Oh, by the way, as a disclaimer, everything I'm mentioning is purely from my childhood memories. If I am wrong or if there's anything that doesn't add up, please feel free to correct me. This is just, I mean, anyone
Don't worry,
who's
Alan. No
listening.
one listens to this.
Okay, well, to the 5 or 6 people that are actually paying attention, again,
You'd be
Yeah,
surprised.
they're
Actually, a lot
seated
more
at
than
this
that.
table.
this is just strictly from what I recall.
Yeah.
But anyway, he gave me this flyer to for these bi-monthly shows in New York City. It was at the McAlpin Hotel, which was like you walk in there and it's like you.
It was one of those by
One of
the
those,
hour
yeah,
places.
yeah. It's not a kid-friendly hotel.
Sticky floors.
Anyway, you go up. You
Hey.
go. The elevator takes you up to the 7th floor, 8th floor. You go to one of those ballrooms, and you pay your $2 to get in. And as soon as you walk in,
Everywhere.
just
Wall to wall
That's
tables,
amazing.
boxes, and
I mean, this is the kind of stuff I would create a time
I've
machine
never
for.
seen.
I would totally
I've never
underutilize
seen
it.
comic books like that before. And the first dealer that I remember seeing was Sparkle City Comics.
Really?
Wow.
That was the first deal that I remember seeing. The original Sparkle City Comics. They,
And they were a New York-based company.
no, they weren't. Sparkle City was actually, they were out of Dayton, Ohio, I believe. They started 77, maybe 76. And they were like the biggest. They were Heritage before Heritage. They were
Right.
Metropolis before Metropolis.
Wow.
They had like the 8-table setup. They had everything.
So that was a big deal for them, even though they were coming from Ohio. Like that show was a big deal for them to go to.
They were like that was
The main- the
that was the
main,
main attraction.
attraction.
And they did things that you take for granted now. Like you walk in, they were the first dealers that you saw. They had to be right in front. As soon as you walk in, you saw them. They had they used backing boards. No one used backing boards before. They had comic books displayed. Nobody had the wall units that
Everybody
they
had
have now,
boxes
yeah.
and stuff just to go
It
through.
was boxes, and you had the more expensive books were on the table in the middle with plastic covering over it. So you had to kind of reach under it and pull the book out if
Okay.
you wanted to see it. But the dealers that had wall space, you see, wall space was more expensive back then. So what they would do, and this sounds ludicrous, they would actually tape
I know
their
what you're gonna
comic
say.
books to the wall with masking tape. They were in plastic bags, but they would tape them to the back of the wall. So I remember one of these shows I saw an Action 1 taped to a wall with a price tag of $1,500 on it.
Oh my god.
And I was like, that could have been $1 million to me.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah,
I mean,
you're right.
It
You're
could
right.
today as well.
You're right.
I remember seeing that. That was
Wow.
just that's.
You mean you mean 5?
Is it that high now?
Higher grades? Yeah. Wow, that's just amazing, Alan.
But that was like one of my. I mean, I went to that show. I think it was every other month, and
So were you into it for collecting or just like reading at that point?
I was reading a lot of DC. I was reading the character that got me into reading is actually Captain Marvel Shazam. That's actually the first book that I bought off the newsstand, which I still have. Shazam #1, 1973.
You still have that
I have
exact
one,
book,
yeah.
that exact
I still-
copy?
yes.
Ah, I have the
That's
same deal.
cool. So is that a pedigree?
That's awesome.
That's probably a pedigree, isn't it?
The
No,
Goldstein pedigree?
Yeah.
I mean,
The G pedigree.
You joke it.
The G copy.
You joke about it right now. His collection will probably one day become a pedigree.
No, because it
The
wasn't all
Alan
part of the
pedigree?
same location.
Oh, we'll get to that. We'll get to
Well,
that.
we'll talk to what I think a pedigree should be.
Okay.
Or the definition
into
of
that.
a pedigree. But no, that was the first comic that I bought because, again, watching all these cartoons, you were able to, relate to these characters. Shazam was actually a live action show.
Yep.
It was on Channel
Yeah,
2.
my dad's been rewatching on DC.
Yeah, and
Universe.
I bought the the DVD set, and I can't believe how silly they were, but it's cool. I mean, it was one of the first live action shows of a character that I liked before I actually knew that he was.
Yeah.
Right. That's awesome. So, what are your kind of like biggest, I guess, observations? Like you mentioned, they were the first ones to do bags of, boards, and then, no one had racks back then.
No.
What was like, how has the evolution really changed? Like, what did it go to like before it got to today? Like, what did you notice like first changing?
Also, I'm going to interject there quick. Did you always collect comics or did you have a period where you stopped?
I collected. I collected from. We'll get to that. I collected from 73 to about 80, and then I just kind of lost interest.
Well, how old were you by the time 1980 came?
17, 18.
Yeah.
Girls.
I know
Sounds
why.
about right.
I know why you lost interest.
Girls.
Well, at that time, remember you asked me if it was cool
I
to. Believe it or not, it was not cool to
Yeah.
be involved in that type of pop culture. I mean, listen, my life was Freaks and Geeks.
Right.
That
Yeah.
show. I graduated high school in '81. That show was set in '81. Every one of those 18 episodes, something happened to me that happened in that episode.
That's hilarious.
It's
Great show.
It is a great show,
Yeah,
and
it
it
is.
is
Never seen
dead on.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That's funny.
The experiences were so real.
So during that time, did you like adopt any nicknames or anything like that? Maybe from like the Ninja Turtles, something? Maybe?
No,
No, not maybe one of the villains. I don't know.
no. I don't know what you're getting at.
I don't know. Did you? I thought I heard rumors that you adopted an alter ego.
Me, no. Are we still talking about comic books?
It's about Alan G, aka the Shredder.
Okay. Would you like to delve into that? That's fine. I'm an open book.
Since we're in the 80s,
Okay.
This wasn't the 80s.
it was later.
It was much later.
Oh, you kidding me?
Oh.
What, my stint with
All right, we'll come back to it.
go
later.
back to
that was later on. That was much
We'll
later
come
on.
back to it later.
Back to comics.
I actually have a funny story about that I can lead in with if
Okay.
anybody wants.
Well, I stopped collecting because first all my friends were gone. I mean, there was
Yeah.
no more collecting friends. And again, it was fun when you had friends to do with. I was more interested in music. I was becoming more proficient as a drummer. I needed to buy drums. I had no support other than for myself, so I had to make a decision. Do I want to stay in this world and kind of be alone? Or do I want to, I was starting to play in bands. I was playing with more quality musicians, and I just didn't have the time to do both. And also not having transportation, not knowing, being out of the loop, really not knowing what's hot, what isn't. I just lost interest. It's something that I didn't sell anything. I didn't get rid of anything right away, but I wasn't actively looking for books. I wasn't, I lost interest in the shows. I just wasn't paying attention to pop culture the way I did then and the way I do now.
So what was it that pulled you back then?
Another TV show. There was a show called The Incurable Collector that started airing like in the late 90s. And there was a segment on comic books, and it just threw me back into, oh, wow, I remember that. I remember this. So what I did was I just started, I started rebuying everything that I sort of got rid of later.
Oh, so you did get rid of some stuff
I did.
over the years.
I saved some Golden Age.
Okay.
I did buy a bunch of Golden Age books, which I still have those as well.
Were there any like standout
Nice.
books that you remember that you let go of?
Nah, nothing. Nah. I think
Because I know your memory. If there was something that you let go of, like at
I
the
sold
time, you would've
I
known.
sold an Aquaman 1 that I bought from some kid in Hebrew school.
That could have been your Aquaman one.
I didn't pay very much for it, and I think I got $10 for it at the time.
Nice.
It was low grade, so
Wow.
It wasn't Allen quality.
no, it wasn't. It wasn't. But it was a complete Aquaman 1. You know,
No pages missing.
no,
Doesn't interrupt story.
no.
Nice. All right, so back to what your question was before.
So it's just kind of like the evolution of, cons. Like from that day to there, I mean, everyone knows who attends cons what they look like now. I'm kind of curious, like, what was the in-between? Like, how did they gradually get to where they were going? Like, what were the differences that you saw?
Back then to cons now.
Yeah.
Well, there was no cosplay. and hardly any girls. I mean, it was a sausage factory. it was a lot of guys. It was just people buying and selling and trading comic books and some art. The setups really weren't elaborate. People that did have books for display that weren't taped to the walls was sort of like I remember one guy had it looked like an easel setup that he had books. They had books on, but it was just mostly boxes. A lot of bargain boxes. There were 20-cent boxes, 50-cent boxes. You used to find a lot of good stuff.
I'm sure.
What? So you mentioned art. Was there a lot of art too back then? Also,
I remember
original art?
there were some pages, but again, they weren't going for stupid money. I mean, I remember one guy was selling, I think they were early Spider-Man pages, and I think he was asking $50, $75 a page.
Talking about Ditkos? We're
Oh,
talking
yeah.
about Ramitas? You don't know.
Probably.
It was in the early 70s, so
Yeah.
it would have been...
What about creators? Did creators generally show up to these things or not?
Like
usually?
Stanley and stuff. Was he ever at anything?
Stanley started showing up later on. They did I think in the mid 70s. Didn't Stanley do his own? It was a Marvel Comic Con.
You tell us.
I don't know. I thought there was some sort of Marvel sponsored show that Stan Lee attended. I saw on YouTube. There's a bunch of clips of old Stan Lee clips from the mid 70s where he's at a con talking to a bunch of kids. Really low quality stuff, but I was amazed that I didn't know that people actually saved that, archived that.
Oh,
You
sounds
should-
like we
you
should
should look
try
into
and track those down.
Track
Yeah.
those down.
There's
It should still be
there's
up there.
definitely stories of him going like to different places too. Because I remember listening to an interview that McFarlane gave, and he said he was traveling for travel baseball, and the hotel they happened to be staying at had some comic show there, and Stan Lee was there, and there wasn't a lot of people around. And Todd McFarlane's like, you mind if I sit with you for a little while? He goes, I don't know why anyone would want to sit with an old man, but go ahead. And I was just like, that's pretty cool to get into it at that time and
That's pretty cool.
be able to pick someone's brain who's so huge in the world
Just
of
to serve
comics.
someone.
Yeah.
You know what? You say that, but I feel like even 20 years ago, I remember a story
Oh, yeah,
like
100%, 100%.
Kirkman did that. He drove someone to and from the airport. I think it was like Eric Larson. I could be wrong. I might be completely off on this. But
Kirkman, the Walking
like
Dead Kirkman?
yes,
Yeah.
like Robert Kirkman when he was trying to break into comics, just wound up hanging out at a convention with one of those old timers, not old timers, but
Yeah.
one of the veterans, and just drove him to the airport. Got stuck in traffic with him and just picked his brain for an hour and a half.
Yeah.
Gotta start somewhere.
It's amazing
Yeah,
how
it's-
some of that stuff happens.
It's funny, man.
I don't remember seeing any creators there, or if I did, I didn't know who they were.
Nah.
So,
Nice.
Nice. So when did you start going to shows again?
probably
Was it right away or was it into the 2000s a bit?
I think I went to a couple of shows in the late 80s just to see what was going on. I think after Batman in 89, things started getting heated up again. A lot of...
It took some of the kind of... what's the word I'm looking for? Like the comical value out of, it stripped that away and it's like, oh, these were kind of serious again. Because the people who weren't reading back then, everyone thought of Batman 66. Batman was a joke. It was a kind of a clown character.
Yep.
Batman, the 89 movie legitimized it again. I've told these guys before, but my dad used to have this little shipping container across the street from where Nathan's are. I don't know if you remember that Coney Island area back then. People used to sell T-shirts and stuff like that. My dad used to buy these really nice, elaborate, I think it was like Frank Miller art ones, in the city and sell them over in Coney Island. And he was making money hand over fist.
Well, I do know the Coney Island area, especially Nathan's.
Yeah.
That's a good segue.
Right across the street. All right, so since we've beat around
That's a
the
great
bush
segue.
of this so many times, why don't you tell us about your experiences at that Nathan's?
Okay. For a very short period of time, I was involved with competitive eating.
Okay. And did you have a nickname? Just
I was
curiosity?
given a nickname.
Okay.
It was basically the organization that ran this, and I did this as a goof. It just seemed like a fun, dumb thing to do. I was always able to eat more than the average person. I said, oh, well, this seems like fun. I'll give this a shot. So Nathan's every year has the 4th of July hot dog eating contest, and used to be anyone could kind of get into it. It was no big deal. All of a sudden, they call this a sport. You got me on that one too. But
Well, I mean, Al, did you not train for that?
You did.
well, not initially.
Oh.
Not initially. I did. They have these in order to get to the main contest on the 4th of July, you had to win a qualifier. So around March, April, Nathan sponsors all these qualifiers all over the country, which is like a mini contest. It was a 10 or 12 minute all-you-can-eat hot dog contest. The winner of the qualifier goes on to compete at the 4th of July. So I went down and won, and I won. And I was, oh, this was easy. And it felt like it was a cross between wrestling and shark feeding at the zoo, or at the aquarium, rather. It was weird. And
How many hot dogs did you put down?
The first time.
the first time, 12. That was
the win?
That was the win, yeah.
Wow.
I was a bunch of
Wow.
nobodies, yeah. I got lucky.
Wow.
So, as time went on, I got into this. It was fun. I wanted to, compete with some of the upper echelon eaters, so I started training. And
Yeah.
I don't want to get into the training techniques because you'll probably never want to eat again. But I got to.
Surprised
I think
you do.
My
You still
personal
eat.
best was like close to 30.
I think I remember that.
Yeah, and that's I'm not.
Was that
proud
at one
it.
of the competitions, or was it on your own training?
Oh, that was at the competition.
at the competition.
I think 28 and a half or 29.
Was that in 2010?
Yeah, 2010. That was
Or-
the last.
Funny story
That was
about
my last hurrah.
funny story about
So
2010.
you went out on top.
Funny story about 2010. My grandfather was in the hospital in Albany. That's not actually funny. That's not funny at all. What was funny was it was July 4th weekend, and I happened to go down from, if you've ever been to Albany Medical Center, there's like a sports bar that's basically like attached and on the first floor. So I went visiting my grandfather with my mom, my brother, my aunt. We go see him. We go down to the sports bar. We go eat, and the hot dog eating contest comes on. And I'm looking up at the screen, and all of a sudden I see Alan. I was like, I know that guy.
You knew him back then.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know that guy.
That's funny.
I've worked with that guy. What's he doing? It was awesome.
Like I said, it was a lot of fun. What happened after a while, I realized that if I wanted to take it to the next level, I would have to train even harder. And I'm saying to myself, do I really want to damage my digestive system, possibly to the point of no return? And
Right.
it was a no-brainer to say, I had enough, I had fun, I got on, I made, listen, this Nathan's contest, even though it's kind of goofy, it's a big deal for a lot of people.
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah.
Only about 10, 15 people make it, and hundreds try out for it.
You made it 5 times?
5 times, yeah. I mean, again, I'm not ashamed I did it. I'm not sorry I did it. But, when I got out of it And the high came, when I sort of
Took
got
a step
over
back.
it. When I look back into it, I realized how kind of absurd it was. I mean, again, I'm not knocking. I did it. It was fun. It was a point in my life where I don't know. I guess a lot of people that do this are looking for some sort of attention. I just did it because I thought it was fun.
Yeah.
And I was getting attention that I really wasn't looking for.
Right.
I mean, I was getting recognized in restaurants. And it was annoying, too.
Last year, the guy at the
On
waiter
Jericho
recognized you.
Turnpike.
I still don't believe you.
He told us when we came back. He's like, "Don't bring the shredder here again."
So
I'm just kidding.
besides hot dogs? What else did you have anything else that you ate?
We've derailed so much, but I
Oh
love
my
it.
God.
I love it.
There was contests for almost every food. I was interested in this thing for about 8 years. I didn't compete for
That's
8
a long
years.
time.
No. I was interested in it for
Okay.
8 years.
Okay.
I've competed maybe a handful of times. A lot of these contests are in remote parts of the country. You have to go there on your own dime.
Didn't
there was
you go to
certain.
Vegas?
What was that?
Didn't you go to Vegas?
Oh yeah, that was an invitational. Yeah. We need to talk about that too.
I mean, we went down the rabbit's hole. Tell us about
Let's
Vegas.
just say
Let's end it with Vegas.
Well, there were 2 Vegas. Well, actually, there were 3. There were 3 Vegas experiences with the eating. The first time I went to Vegas to eat was this was actually the Plaza Hotel downtown. There was the 20-pound burger contest.
Ooh.
Yeah,
Wow.
everybody got a 20-pound hamburger, and it was whoever finished it first won. I think I got through
Bun and all?
Bun and all. Yeah, it was
How
really.
big, how big is the bun for something that
Yeah, it
size?
was pretty
Jeez.
big. It was pretty big. It wasn't pleasurable. It just wasn't a good. I think I
It's
got
hard to
through.
cook
I
something
got
like that, too.
well, they bake it like a meatloaf,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
parts of it weren't cooked, and
Yeah.
Yeah.
so that was the first Vegas experience. The second, I think, Spike TV. I don't know if is that
Yeah.
still
Yeah.
on the air.
Yeah, it's still
I
a
think
thing.
it's Paramount
Spike.
now.
Yes. Well, Spike TV did a week-long sort of an elimination thing at the organization
I remember
ran.
these. Yeah.
And I was invited to go, and it was actually pretty cool. They gave me I got an appearance fee. I got they paid for lodging. I got free back and forth to the airport. It was actually kind of fun. I've never seen it. I've never seen it. I've never watched anything I've done. I did it. I don't need to relive it.
I can understand that.
I know it's floating out there somewhere, but I don't have any interest in it back.
Matt, make sure you put that
Oh,
up
I've seen it.
tomorrow.
Don't worry. We got you. All right, shall we move on?
Yeah, I guess we should maybe talk about comics again.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know where the segue went. I mean, we went from 1980 to 2004.
So we were in conventions. How about you talk about like how you started like working them, like how you got the experience with wanting to get more involved than just collecting.
I just made friends with all the dealers that I used to buy from, and I would say, hey, if you ever need any help, or if ever need a hand, let me know. And a couple of a dealer that I used to work with, and won't mention any names, I used to help him, and he had an extremely extensive gold and silver age inventory and art, and at the time I knew nothing about the business. I was not, I just did it because I like being around the books. So I was sort of being baptized by fire. I didn't realize how hard it is
Nice
to
term.
to sell and to believe in what you're selling is rough, especially when it's not your stuff.
Yeah.
So I did that for a while, and I just started, I started paying more attention to what people wanted, what people were asking for. Now with what I'm totally amazed at now is how hot new stuff is, and how valuable, or I don't know if it's valuable, but how much people are willing to pay for new stuff. And I just don't understand it.
Well, I think what they're trying
Please explain.
they're trying to do is they're trying to create the rarity of the newer stuff by doing like these covers and stuff like that. Not doing
manufactured scarcity.
Exactly. It's a great term. That's what a lot of people are saying. It's manufactured scarcity, and they're trying to make these newer things hot because not everybody can afford to get those older things. There's not a lot of them out there.
On the flip side, there's also like the big new first appearances or new characters show up, and people speculate on that.
Yeah. That's big.
And I know from the time that I used to order stuff for the store, like you try and stick with. You read that previews catalog every month, and you're just like, is this gonna add readers? Is this gonna drop readers?
That's on you to decide that.
And more times than not, you want to keep your profit margins as good as possible, as close as possible. So you order close to what the previous month's orders were, unless you have a really good feeling that something's gonna happen.
It's tough, right?
It's really tough, and so there actually is generally a scarcity unless the manufacturer, unless the publisher decides to print extra, knowing that something big is going to happen. Yeah. You're going to have some scarcity on that.
Just to touch on something you just mentioned, so the previews, it comes in book. You can also get it
previews
online.
catalog.
It's at previewsworld.com is the
Yep.
online.
Previewsworld.com.
It's really a great tool to use if people want to see what's coming out. It has so much information in there.
They have everything like 2 months in advance, I think.
Yeah, it's just an additional tool that if you're not aware of, I would definitely check it out.
For sure.
They do the solicitations. They do solicitations piecemeal earlier in the month before previews is released in the comic shops. So like you can see like what is DC doing in 2 months, what's Marvel doing in 2 months, what's Dark Horse doing in 2 months, what's Image doing in 2 months, and yada yada yada, and then you get previews and it's all together, all in one place, all the images, all the descriptions, who's on it, who's not, if there are alternate covers, what do those look like or not. So that is a stupendous tool. Is it a really helpful tool when you're ordering hundreds of books per week?
Yeah,
it is stressful.
And it's not just comic books either. They've got statues in there. They've got
action
shirts,
figures,
t-shirts, action figures,
magazines.
It's actually a pretty good
books.
resource.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. It's just when you're ordering, you want to try and hit those numbers exact.
So Alan, back to what we were talking about.
Okay.
So you've done the comic work. You start getting into it. You're kind of the one who I think taught a lot of the people at this table about what to look out for in terms of condition. Now that grading is hot, the things that kind of stand out on the book. How did that happen? Who taught you to kind of do that? Or did you kind of learn it on your own?
That's a good question.
Well, let's see. That's a good question.
Yes.
I'm going home.
Again, when you're buying something and you're spending money,
Right.
big money on something, you want to make sure that it's what it's advertised to be, And, look, dealer wants to make a sale. You want to buy the book. You want to make sure you're getting something quality and in the condition that that's advertised in. So you have to kind of teach yourself. I've found the Overstreet grading guide, and I just immersed myself in it. Now, not that that's not a Bible or anything, but
Right.
that's it was
It's
a
a
great
size
It's a
reference.
place to start.
It's a place to start.
It's the size of a Bible.
There's a lot of examples. Just look at a lot of books. Just after a while, you'll start to memorize. Oh, there's this chip. There's a dent. There's this.
Oh,
so
yeah,
there can't be any. You could when you look at a book. The first thing when I try to grade something, I'll say, well, you know what, I could eliminate 9A through 8.5.
You give it like
right
a
away.
range, right?
You can get rid of that right away, and you can get rid on the bottom inch. You can get rid of like 2 to like 4 or 5. So you have a little range to work with, and you just try to eliminate from the top, bottom until you
Find that middle ground.
Now when CGC grades a book, they have a team. So they have 3 or 4 people
of
looking
course.
at a book. So one guy can call it something.
Well, when professional graders grade a team.
Oh yeah. Oh, we're not supposed to mention.
Well, no, we don't. I'm just saying that there's multiple
Well,
companies.
you can
out
edit
there.
that out.
Yeah.
Yeah. When a book is professionally graded, it's not just by one person.
Yeah.
So
Plus, they have their own standards too that may be different than what everybody else knows.
non-published standards.
Exactly.
So it's very hard to whatever you learn on your own, you don't know because
Yeah, that's why your book you can't always expect your books to come back
no.
what you think they are.
So
and you can't chase grades either.
would you say that your experience behind the counter, having so many books that you would have to go through, that you were trying to sell, that you were looking at, that seeing that multitude of books rather than just being a buyer looking at books, but being the vendor as well, did that help you with grading?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it did, because again, you can only look at your own book so many times.
Right.
It helps to look at books that you're not familiar with. It also helps you know artists, to know writers. Again, I that was an area that I have very little knowledge in. Like, I don't know Jim Lee's Batman from Geddy Lee's Batman. I just, I never, I just don't know.
I do.
I'm sure you do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that was it?
Wow, that was dead silence there for a second.
Oh yeah, you can edit that out too.
No, we're definitely keeping that. All right, so I guess now that we got into kind of condition and stuff like that, one of the big things where I don't think it's still really clear to us, is kind of pedigrees. Older books, golden age books. What qualifies as a pedigree?
Well, there's a great website that you could check out.
I guess
I will link to it.
From your understanding, but please do that.
So there's a set standard. I don't know if you want to talk about what your in your opinion, because you said you had your own opinion about what pedigree should be, right?
Oh, I think it's the opinion that is recognized by I thought there was an interruption. I mean, a pedigree is usually a very large collection. Okay. Amassed by one person, runs of various titles, multiple titles, roughly in the same condition, acquired by the same place, all firsthand.
Yeah, those are all CGC's criteria, actually.
Okay, so there you go.
Yeah, and CGC has to continue to recognize it for it to be an actual.
You mean a grading company?
Pedigree. I'm so sorry, a grading company. Yes,
One of the independent third-party grading companies.
Very good. Yeah. So, have you ever owned any pedigree books, like high ones?
I actually have a few different, quote-unquote, I wouldn't say pedigree books, but from some famous collections. In fact, I have one right here.
Oh, you're the first person to bring something. It's so cool.
Yeah.
Show and tell.
Show and tell time, boys and girls.
I have a comic book. It's a Strange Tales 107 classic cover. This is from the...
What's the grade on it?
It's a 5.5.
Okay.
White pages.
Nice.
This is there's a certificate of authenticity. This is from the IRS collection.
Ooh, please explain.
Okay, I was at I got this at the first EternalCon.
Oh, nice.
EternalCon. I'm walking around. I saw a guy had a little display, and it said, "Books from the IRS collection." And I'm like, "What the heck?" And I walk over, and I actually needed this, so I worked out a deal, purchased this book. It turns out that the IRS collection was a 60,000.
Sorry, just move closer. To the mic.
It was the IRS collection was a 60,000 book collection acquired by a collector who used to work for the Colorado IRS. His goal was to collect every book that ever came out, and what he would do, he was a little finagler. He allegedly got into the computer system, and he used to write refund checks for people that either died or that moved out of the Colorado area, and he had these checks go to an address that he controlled, and he was collecting thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars a week, and he was supporting
allegedly, or he was he
was
convicted.
I believe he was convicted because the collection was seized.
Okay.
And it was auctioned off by an auction company to pay for for restitution.
Yeah.
So I got lucky, and I got this one.
That's amazing.
And so is it a pedigree? No, because I'm sure they were purchased from all different, secondhand. But it's a famous collection. It came from one major source.
So there's also collections as well as pedigrees then.
Yeah.
So what other is there any other ones that you know,
like
off
famous
the top?
collections that aren't pedigrees?
Yeah, that are considered like known collections. Like this is a known collection.
This is a known collection. Well, I know somebody that would like to think the Monero Hills are a pedigree.
Yeah.
There was actually a famous collection. It was called the Tremont Collection. There were two brothers. This is from what I understand. Two brothers in the Tremont section of the Bronx collected comics for most of their childhood and adolescent life, and they amassed a huge collection. And I think Metropolis took the collection, and they were consigned by Metropolis. And I actually owned a few of those books. Really nice books, but again, they weren't bought all from the same place. They were all pieced out all over, from different secondhand places. So they couldn't get a pedigree status. I think they tried, but it was turned down. But the Metropolis made little emblems for the books. It was actually pretty nice.
That's cool.
So even with the pedigree, though, like even if it's the original owner, he could have got that person could have maybe got it from the same newsstands and stuff like that.
Well, that's the thing. It's assumed that they bought them off the stands and held them.
There has to be
But
research.
There's no way to tell that. Okay, his buddy bought 10 of these.
Well, I don't think they go into that deep.
Yeah,
that
but
detail
but he never passed them on from that point. All right, I get it for the most part. It seems pretty clear cut.
Well, do you want to talk about some famous pedigrees?
Well, I mean, the Mile High pedigrees, that's probably the most famous, recognized pedigree in the world. I mean, probably the greatest collection amassed by one person.
It's the biggest and the highest grade out of all of them.
Yeah.
The highest average grade.
The Mile Higher or the church one?
They're the same thing.
Oh, it's the same. It's
Mile High is the comic book company that bought the collection, and Edgar
but it was
Church is the
called-
original owner.
Oh, so what is it actually referred to?
Both. Mile High copies are church copies.
Are they listed on the labels? The graded labels?
Oh, yeah.
What's the name of on the labels?
Mine says Mile High.
It says Mile High.
Does it say church?
Yeah.
No, it just says Mile High.
I think some of the older ones said church. It said Mile High / church.
Just curious if anyone's out there and they're looking, if you buy a graded copy, you would want to see, look for that on. It's usually on the back, right? Is it on the back or the front?
No,
it's
it's,
on
on,
the
it's on the
The
front.
front label.
It's on the front.
Yep.
I think it's in parentheses too. It's weird.
Did you ever hear how when Chuck Rosansky bought this collection, what he saw when he first saw these books, how they were arranged?
They were stacked into. They were in a closet in 8-foot stacks, all stacked on top of each other.
And you know how they were stacked? Spine.
Yep.
Spine.
So
alternating
alternating,
spine,
alternating spines so that you can.
so everything laid flat. I do that all the time. I flip stuff upside down.
He walked in. I read his blog about this. He walked in. He saw these stacks, looked at the books, and they were perfect.
That's unbelievable.
Absolutely perfect.
Unbelievable.
They sat there for
And
60
they were in
years.
it. The name of the person was Edgar Church, who owned them.
Yes.
And Chuck Rosansky is the owner of Mile High Comics.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So they were. He went to go look at these because they were auctioning off his house, the house that they were in, and whoever the real estate agent or whatever was like, "Hey, listen, there's a bunch of comics in the basement. We need to get rid of them as soon as possible. Please come down."
Just take them.
Yeah.
My goodness.
No, so he goes down and it's like, and forgive me, what's his name, Chuck Rosansky? I
Yeah.
got this wrong, but he goes there and it's just too much. Like
This is how you should read the news, by the way.
Yeah, I know. I got it. well, it's Zach's job now. So.
passionate.
You
very
are more
passionate.
natural this way. He is right. Yeah.
And very passionate too.
Yeah, well, Zach's radio voice is better for news. I think, so. Anyway, so he goes there and it's just way more comics than he even fathomed. How many? Alan, do you know how many there were? 60,000 or something? That might be completely off.
This Edgar Church, as a kid, he must have been a very wealthy kid because to spend 10 cents a book in the 30s, when 10 cents could buy groceries for the week, I mean,
Yeah.
that's real disposable income at the time. He tried to get every book from 1938 to 1950.
I was completely off. It was 18,000 comics.
18,000?
18,000. All stacked in this basement.
Still more than I have.
Wow.
So he gets there and he says to the real estate agent, "Yeah, I want them." And she's like, "Okay, you got to get them out right now." And he's like, "I have an Oldsmobile. What do you want me to do?" So he took them in batches. He stacked up the comics, as many as he could fit in his car, and drove 5 miles an hour back to his apartment.
5 miles.
This is what Detective 27 in action won in the stacks, and just back and forth until he had them all.
There's actually a picture of
Can't see
him.
my face, but it's very angry right
Yeah.
now.
There's actually a
Why can't we
picture
be
of
that
Chuck
lucky?
Rosansky with these books,
Yeah.
sitting at his kitchen table holding the Batman one.
It's
and
just stacked around his apartment.
it's
And he said that one of the worst things that he saw, as he was loading the books, he'd look into the trash cans or whatever, original art in the trash cans that they threw out. They didn't know what it was. Original art.
He didn't say that?
It was all crumpled up and whatever.
wasn't Edgar
And
Church
he
an
also couldn't
artist?
take everything.
I don't know. I didn't know that. I just thought this was Mile High.
He might have been an artist,
I
and he
think
collected all that stuff.
That might have been his drawings that were in the trash cans.
Right. Yes, it might
Yeah.
have been actually. You're right.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Still probably worth a lot of money now.
This story makes me angry. every
Yeah.
time
So
I
at
hear
the
it.
time, it ended up taking him about 10 years to resell everything. But The collection was
Oh,
kind
I
of...
don't feel bad for him. I know what was in there.
So the collection was kind of kept secret. Only a few people knew about it. There was like words about this crazy collection that was found, but nobody kind of believed it. And when he was selling the books, he priced all the books at 2 to 3 times whatever the guide price was at the time, which was completely unheard of. And everybody was very mad about it. Yeah, he did that because he was afraid because they were so nice, if he priced them guide, that it would flood the market and completely like kill the old age
destroy.
market.
Yeah.
Have you seen any of these? I'm specifically asking, have you seen the action one from this collection?
Have I seen it? No.
No.
I've heard about it.
Yeah.
Only a few people have seen it.
Very few people have seen it.
Yeah.
And
I've actually seen. No, scratch that. The action one. Rumor has it that it would probably grade out a 9.4.
Wow.
$10 million easy.
You think? You think so? 10 million?
Listen, if a 9.0 sold for 3.2 million, I think that book could sell for 5 million right now. Easy.
You know who would buy it? A celebrity would buy it.
It's got
100%.
Yeah.
$10 million, wouldn't even think twice about it.
Yeah.
So just whoever said Edgar Church was an illustrator, he was. Looking
for
at
who?
for the Colorado commercial telephone book.
Oh, so not comics.
According to Wikipedia, which is nicely brought up on my phone here, Edgar Church was a comics collector and artist who worked independently and eventually for the telephone company in Colorado, illustrating commercial telephone book advertisements, precursors to the Yellow Pages.
You were reading that very well, by the way.
Thank you. Apparently, he used them for reference.
Yeah.
It's like he just amassed this giant collection of stuff that he would use for art reference.
Yeah.
They used to call that artist's morgue.
Oh, cool.
It's not really that cool.
It's mildly cool.
But
So
the
he-
more you know.
He
I
illustrated.
want
the
that in there.
And Matt, how many books were in the
18,000.
18,000.
Yeah.
And do you know what the page quality was on a lot of those books?
I don't.
They were supposed to have had white pages.
They really.
Now, do you think since X number of years later, since they've been dispersed all over different parts of the country, even the world, do you think the atmospheric conditions, the humidity,
That's
has
the thing.
affected? You know,
That's one thing I was reading about, how like these pedigrees, they were found in this condition, but
In places where kind of.
yeah, but again, some of these
conditions didn't
some of these
alter.
pedigrees were found in the 70s. You know.
First of
Since
all-
then, what's happened?
First of all, being found in Colorado, where
Yes.
it's probably
That's
the
what I was
best
trying to get to.
conditions to collect comic books
Yeah.
in.
they were in a cold basement for
Yeah.
50 years.
It's very low
Cedar-
humidity.
Cedar
Yeah.
walls, no?
Yeah.
It was literally like a
No,
cedar.
I think it was in a cedar
Yeah.
closet.
yeah, so I
Yep.
mean,
It
it's
wouldn't get mold. It wouldn't.
no bugs, no
It was just the
pests.
perfect
Yeah.
pre-archival storage before
Yeah.
Mylights, you know.
Yeah.
I'm so
essentially.
glad you said that because I've been trying to look for a segue to get to this.
Okay.
So, along
I've
with,
segued.
along with grading comics. Now you have a good deal of grading comics, correct?
Yeah,
But you're also a fan of not grading comics as well, correct?
correct.
So, and I feel like the people who actually do that is kind of like it's dwindling. The people who don't want their books graded because you see the lines at all these grading companies at every convention. For someone who does feel that way and doesn't want to go and like trap their book forever, how do you recommend kind of preserving it without putting it in a piece of plastic like that?
Well, your book should be in some sort of plastic bag. If you could put them in, I mean, if you want real good storage, put them in Mylars or Mylights. You know, that's archival storage. You know, you don't have to switch them out like you would the regular polypropylene bags, which trap the gases and the mold. And I mean, if you ever looked at an old collection, pull the bags off, they're all yellow.
Yeah.
That's what happens over time. Now, some of the new books, they don't use pulp paper like the old books. So
I wish they did.
I don't
I love
think
that paper.
I don't think that would happen. If you put the new books in the cheap,
They'll be fine.
they should be because it's not real paper. I don't think. I
Right.
mean,
Yeah, I forgot what they call
what do
it,
you?
but-
It's
It's
what's
still
the paper
paper,
called?
but it's like it's coated.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's not the pulp like the newsprint that they used to
No,
use for
it's not.
comics.
It's
Any-
like some type of waxy
Yeah,
material.
so
almost.
that wouldn't break down. I mean, maybe in 100, 200 years, but I don't think you would have that much to worry about as far as the paper breaking down.
And I know from one of your preferences on especially the older books, you like the open tops, right? because I know you've mentioned you like this idea of the comics breathing a little bit.
Is that a thing? That
I
actually
was always told. I mean, I don't know how true it is that you should let the air out. You know, if it's trapped. But then again, when it's in a graded well, it's airtight. So
Yeah,
I don't I don't know how true that is. I like the sleeves because it's just easy to take them out. There's no tape. I mean, if you're doing a lot of shows, okay, and you're constantly moving your books, I don't know if I would want them in the sleeves.
But also, if it's the kind of old, expensive books that people want to get a closer look at, much easier to take them out if you don't have tape.
Yeah, but again, if you're bringing your books in the rain, or it's, that's kind of a double-edged sword. The sleeves are 4 mil thick, whereas the bags are only 2.
That's the Mylights too?
The Mylights 2, yeah.
Right.
So it is better protection to have them in the sleeves. But again, if you're keeping them in the house, if it's really tight, if it's not, you're not really handling them that much. I like the sleeves just because it's easy.
And just to give people an idea, these aren't your typical bags and boards that you find like the back of your comic book store. These are called Mylights. They are on the more expensive side, but these aren't for your latest issue of like The Punisher or something like that. These are for
What's wrong with
books
the latest issue of The Punisher?
What's that?
What's wrong with the latest issue of The Punisher?
Listen, if you enjoy that book, then I guess whatever the highest value you can attest from all your books, if you want to spend the money on these Mylights.
I think he's saying that it's insignificant.
Yes. Yeah. It's worth about less than what you paid for it already. If you want to be frankly honest. It's pretty much like a car. Unless it goes up in value, these books, they're already worth less once you read them. It's true stuff.
But the real
Mylights do make books look good. I mean, you can
They do.
take a low-grade book, put it in a nice Mylight.
Looks
nice.
People are secrets.
Pro tip, touching back on what Alan said just a second ago, the tape on the bags, tape on like expensive books. If ever you're taking a book out, the best bet is to actually peel the entire piece of tape off and put it on your hand or put it elsewhere so that when you're pulling the book out, it doesn't wind up getting stuck on the cover. Definitely not saying that from personal experience. Definitely not something that's happened to me before.
That happened with my detective.
Oh, I've seen it happen.
27. I just threw it away.
And that's just comic book etiquette. Like, we should do a segment on comic book etiquette, like what you should do, what you shouldn't do.
It's kind of a good idea to like kind of walk people through like how to go through a con. Like, if you're looking through books, like kind of like give people some tips.
Alan, you have to tell me. You have to tell everyone my favorite Comic Con story about a guy looking through a book. Amazing Spidey 300. Speaking of comic book etiquette and how to handle books.
This was a show I was working. Oh, this is a long time ago. This is one of the. Oh God, what show was this? Probably one of the monthly Big Apple shows when he had it at the Pavilion, Penn Plaza Pavilion.
Yep.
Is that still where it is though?
That's where it's at still.
But it was actually every other month. It was.
Oh wow! I didn't know that.
Before that, I think they were in St. Mark's Church, and I think one of my first comic conventions was St. Mark's Church. It was probably like 2001, 2002.
This is funny. Guy comes up to the booth and asks to see the Spider-Man 300, and it was like maybe like a 9.2, ungraded. It was like it was a high grade book. Takes it out, looks at it, looks at the cover, looks at the back cover, opens the book very slowly, then starts rummaging through it.
Like molesting
Molesting the book. So he turned
Rifling pages.
He turned a 9.2 into like a 7.5. I was just shocked looking at him. And then he closes the book, puts it back in the bag, and goes, "I'll take it."
Wow.
Okay.
At least he bought it.
Oh, I think he would have bought it either.
Just
way.
rifling through it like he's looking for an address.
Oh my god.
Wow.
He could have been reading the Wall Street Journal, just licking his finger, turning the page. It was just manhandling this book to know, and I'm like,
I would have lost it.
And that's something I guess you got to be careful of, because really,
Especially,
you're letting somebody who you don't know look at a book, take it out, like.
Well, you use your discretion.
Yeah.
If it's like a $4,000 book or something, it's like, oh, yeah, I'm gonna flip the pages for you.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. And it's
Well,
like I would never just give that.
That's
to
when
like a
you break
10-year-old
out
kid
the
either.
white cotton gloves.
Yeah.
you always ask permission. Can I take this out? If you know the person, if you know the person can handle a book, sure, why not? Or I'll always take it out for the person and give it to them on the backing board.
Yeah.
You know,
Tape removed.
tape. I throw the tape out.
Oh, obviously.
I throw it out, and I have we have a roll Scotch tape dispenser.
Do
Just
you
put in a
ever
piece of
shred
tape.
it?
Shred it.
I don't know about any of you, but the very few that I've actually, they take it out is like my hands are like shaking while I'm like looking at it. It's like
If it's an expensive book, yeah.
It's like even if a couple of $100, it's like I don't
someone
want to
else's
ruin
thing,
anything. I'm like, oh, okay, take this away from me.
That's why I don't look through expensive books.
Yeah. I'd rather them show it to me.
Well, there's a story. I'm not going to mention the dealer, but there was an incident where a customer was looking at a Batman 1, and he was handling it, and he insisted on putting it back in the bag against the dealer's said, no, I'll do that.
This.
And as he slided it into the bag, he snagged the bottom of the spine on the bag, and he made like a 2-inch tear on the cover.
Oh my god!
The guy felt terrible, so they talked it out. And luckily, the guy was a wealthy guy. He paid the dealer. He gave
The difference in grade, whatever it ended up
he
being.
cut him a check for apologized up the wazoo, and he paid the dealer money to make it right.
I would never look at a raw copy of that book.
Nope, I would just.
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
It's just like
It
listen,
needs to
I
be
know-
high in glass.
I
Yeah.
knew,
Yeah.
I
Know
need
your-
to
know
be
your
able to
limits.
pay for that to be able to grab it off the table.
It was probably a 4.0 before the
The 2-inch
the
tear.
2-inch tear. I was like,
That's
Wow.
insane.
yeah. So accidents happen, but luckily he wasn't some guy that can I see a Batman one? He
yeah.
But
was
that's
interested in making a
Yeah,
purchase.
it's stressful handling all that stuff too. Like if I ever found a golden age, collection with all that stuff, I wouldn't even want to touch it. I wouldn't know what to do.
Well, first of all,
I'd
that's
probably
not.
crap
These are
my
not the
pants,
books that you
go
want to
home,
handle at a
change, and come
show.
back.
yeah.
You want to go to a showroom. Like
Yeah.
you want to go to sit down at a
kinda like
desk.
a
Yeah,
with
you don't want to
somebody.
do this at New York
Yeah.
Comic Con.
Yeah, you don't want to stand there where the lighting is not that great to begin with.
Excuse me. Bump, bump.
Yeah, cosplayer knocks you and you crush the book.
Yeah, somebody hit you with their sword and that's it.
It's crazy.
All right,
That's why I think that's why I think a lot of people like to buy graded books because you don't have to do that.
No, and it's true, 100%.
Yeah,
It is what it is. What it is.
you got to pay
Yeah.
that
You know,
premium.
there's no argument on the grade there. You don't have to worry about damaging it. I
You
mean,
know
even
what
if
you're
you do,
getting.
yeah.
And if it's a dealer you don't know, you don't have to worry about them being
And
honest
if
about the
the
grades.
restoration check
Yeah.
is worth the price of admission just to begin with. I mean,
100%.
like I said, unless you go to a showroom or you go to a store or you're not standing over a table with 15 people on either side, I would feel funny handling a very expensive book or letting someone handle one of my very expensive books or an expensive book that I'm trying to sell for somebody.
Listen, we've been
Graded
trying
book, no
we've
problem.
been trying to get in your house for years. I didn't even want to touch them. I just want to look at them.
You gotta make it over the electrified fence.
I'll throw a mat at it. Let it short circuit. That's fine.
Wow. All right, so that's a good segue actually into Alan's personal collection.
Who?
So I don't know some of your favorite books that you want to talk about. Something that you've been after for years that you finally got and you were super happy about.
Books that you're looking for that you don't own yet.
Well, that's in part of Alan's key hunt later.
Oh, that's. I
Sorry.
think I might have waited a little too long for some of the books that I'd like to get, but
Yeah.
I remember the when I got my Spider-Man 1, I was congratulated on the purchase. That was the first time that ever happened.
That's funny.
Yeah, congratulations on
Well, wait, the Spider-Man 1 or
No, Spider-Man 1.
Amazing.
I was,
Okay.
whoever, when I finally picked it up, I was congratulated by everybody that saw it.
Would you have a
so.
9.6?
Oh, yeah, right. It's a 5.5.
Yeah, here's a Mile High copy.
Wait,
Yeah.
the Spider-Man one you have is 5.5?
Yeah.
You mean Amazing Fantasy 15?
That's also a 5.5.
Oh, they're both.
Oh, 5.5.
Match set.
Sorry. Apologies. Cool.
A
You're a good
5.5
guy.
is a very, very respectable. I was talking about this with
Yeah,
Matt
I
before.
like 5.5s.
It's actually a very respectable grade. It's a lot of 5.5s present very, very well, and any of the defects either are hidden, or there's numerous small defects. It's not one big disgusting blemish on the book that really takes away its eye appeal.
Gotcha.
I mean, I've seen a ton of 6.5s that look like garbage, and 5.0s, 5.5s that are really presentable. I rather have that. I rather have
100%.
Yeah.
So, out of the stuff that you have, and maybe even the stuff you don't have, you kind of mentioned this earlier with the modern books. What stuff, like, it could be older stuff that really surprised you by, like, the jump in price? I mean, I know, like, Hulk 181, like, Giant Size are the hot books right now, but are there any other ones that you can think of that, you know, since you've been collecting so long? Take your time.
I've seen things get hot and cool down right away, like Batman Adventures 12. You couldn't touch it for a while. Now, no one's even asking for it anymore.
Wait, really? I'm out of the game. I'm out of the game at this a bit.
The last few shows,
Good thing I'm not looking to get rid of mine.
Yeah.
no one has been expressing any interest in that book.
I think
Really?
when
Wow.
that movie comes out again, it'll start to
There's
get a
waves.
stride.
You
Yeah,
know.
with stuff like that, I think it's wave. I mean, that book's never gonna be nothing.
no,
I mean, she's
I
a
don't
major
think so.
character. She's had her own title for a very long time now. Harley
Right.
Quinn, of course.
I sold so many copies of number 12 for $50.
Dude,
Hey,
I
listen,
know.
Man, you know, you gotta do what you gotta do when you gotta do it.
Yeah.
But you gotta hold on to some of your stuff too.
Oh, I still have another copy, but it's part of the run.
Yeah. But yeah. So
I'm amazed that what's that? Edge of Spider-Verse 3, I think it is.
Two.
Two.
I think it is.
Spider-Gwen.
Oh,
Spider-Gwen, rather.
I had no clue that this was going to take off the way it did.
So I got super lucky with mine. I had the black.
Oh, the
Era
rare,
variant.
the era.
Yeah, so I had it. It was 90. It was signed by both writer and creator. It was Latour and
Jason
Robbie
Latour.
Rodriguez.
And Robert Rodriguez.
So I didn't even realize this was a thing, and I was like, oh well, this is interesting. I was like, let me just look at my copy, and I was just like, I looked at it, compared it. I was like, yeah, mine's the Black Arrow one. I sold it for $900.
Did you know?
Dude, that's
Did you
awesome.
buy it knowing that it was an era?
I did not know. I didn't know until after it was graded. Honestly,
That's awesome.
yeah.
Was yours
So-
listed as aired?
They don't list.
They
it.
don't list it. No, they don't list it.
But you can tell. So the person who bought it from me asked for multiple pictures. I actually had my wife. They're like, it kind of looks like there's some shading here. I had to call my wife at home. I was like, I need you to take more pictures of this book. This is where it is. I was like, and they did. And the guy's like, yeah, it's definitely the thing, because like there's no hint of purple. It's completely black. And there's one that so the first printing, it's a hint of black, but you can still see the purple. This you couldn't see the purple at all. The background was completely
And it's not listed
seamlessly
on
black.
the label.
Nope, but if you go on like that error what's that error website? Like there's a website where it
Yeah.
tells you like biggest errors and like, you know, recalled issues and stuff like that. I forgot the name of the website, but it's actually good for stuff like that.
Nice.
That's pretty cool.
But
Yeah.
yeah, that book is surprisingly she's a huge guy, and I think she's going to get bigger too.
Well, I
I
mean,
almost kicked myself in the butt for letting that go at that price.
Yeah.
I've got the shade of purple, little shade of purple on
Yeah,
mine.
and it's hard if you don't see
can't
it in
tell.
person. It's hard to tell. Like you
Yeah.
really need to see that in person, especially when it's graded. Because with the reflection, it's hard to tell when you're not in person looking at it.
That's true.
I'm happy with my copy.
Yeah.
And mine's signed
Nice.
and graded 9.8.
wow.
Thank you, Royal Collectibles.
Thank
I
you,
was there when you
Royal.
bought that.
That's right. That's right. Good deal. Thanks for the deal.
Wow.
Yeah, that's cool, Alan.
So one thing I wanted to talk to you about, we were chatting about this a little bit before, is, I don't know how to phrase it, kind of the future of the hobby in terms of prices. Because we've seen some, like you guys said, we've seen some pretty crazy price hops in the last couple of years, especially last year with Hulk 181. How high do you see everything going? And do you think that there's a plateau?
I thought the plateau was going to happen already. I just I don't understand why Hulk 181 is going so high. I mean, it's not that it's a rare book. It isn't. Giant X also is not a rare book. There's a lot of them out there. What do you think is causing that?
It's the movies.
The movies.
So now that Disney has officially bought Fox, there's going to be 10 more years of high relevancy of those characters.
And
Now they might not be good. If they fail, those books will crash.
Yep.
But if they knock it out of the park, I'll be honest, I think it'll plateau once those movies first get released, and then I think it'll kind of sit there for a while and then come a little bit down. I don't see it coming lower than where it is right now, I'll be honest with you. Like,
No.
how do you expect Wolverine?
There's so many of them out there. I know I keep saying that, but there's
the
so
lower
many.
grade. Yeah, it's called recalledcomics.com, by the way.
Oh,
The website I was referring to. I don't see it. It's Wolverine.
once
He's the
the-
second most popular character they have.
Like right now, it's not rare, but it's very desirable. It's
Listen,
gonna get to a point where it's
Supply and demand.
yeah, it's gonna get to a point where it's still not rare and not as desirable. what happens.
It's possible.
You know.
I-
And my
I-
question is, how far do these things go down?
I don't think the high grade stuff will ever go down though. I'm talking like 7 and above. It's gonna stay.
Mhm.
It's gonna stay pretty consistent. The cheaper stuff, sure, maybe. You might be able to get like the raw copies that are a little beat up for, once the popularity dwindles. But
That's all you're going to see on those books now are lower grade raw copies.
Yeah.
Everything, in my opinion, above a 7.0, 7.5 are already graded.
probably,
probably
you're
right,
probably
yeah.
not wrong.
It's very hard to find a raw copy of these books.
You know what's funny though? I haven't seen a lot of 9/8s. Not a lot of 9/8s.
In what?
In the 181. I've seen definitely more on the giant size. I haven't seen a lot of 9/8s on the Hulk 181.
Because I think people actually read those.
Yeah, I've seen lots of 9/6s. I haven't seen a ton of 9/8s in that book.
I just looked at the prices of Hulk 181.
Well, that's the thing too. The 9/8s, at its peak were 45,000. Was the highest one ever sold.
I'm
45,000?
35,000?
35, I think.
35,000?
I think it was 35,000.
Wow.
Was the highest the 9/8 went for.
I'm just looking at recent sales, and
Dude, it's crazy.
I sold a copy for a buddy 4 or 5 years ago, and I just saw one that has the Marvel value stamp missing. Sell for the price that I sold his, like 7075
Dude, it's
copies.
But it doesn't affect the story.
They never do. It was smart.
So, do we know if anything? Is there any copies higher than a 9.8? Have we seen? Is there not even have we seen, but have you
I'll
heard?
be honest. I
Very
think
easy to find out. Just
I
go
think-
on
I
the
think that-
I'm on the census
third-party
right now,
grader
I
census.
think there's a 9. I think there's a 9.9.
Is it really?
I think there might be a 9.9 out there.
Mhm.
Huh.
But it was sold so long ago that I don't think you can even compare with the price. It might have been like 12,000.
It's probably 199.
Yeah, I think it's. I don't know if there's more than one, but I saw.
What does the
I saw it
census say?
sold for about $12,000, but this was a long time ago.
That's crazy.
It's
Uh,
nuts.
Toy Story's on it.
Oh, stand by.
So any other books that you can think of while
Hold
he's
up, hold up.
researching?
No, it's all good. The total graded Hulk 181s is 9,379.
That's not.
That's
that
just
many.
Universal.
Okay,
There's 199,
there is 199.
117 9/8s, 294
Not a lot of
9/6s,
people. A lot of people sitting on those.
They probably sit on. Yeah.
Yeah.
How many 9.2s?
608.
Do you have a 9.2?
I have a 9.2.
That's what I wanted. I wanted a 9.2, and then the price just. I was into trying to buy one when it was in like the 3,000 range. Now I won't touch it.
And that wasn't.
Yeah.
That wasn't.
That was not too. That was 3 years ago, maybe.
I was
Yeah.
with you. And
Yeah.
that
And I
wasn't
was
really
look-
the best copy either.
No,
It
it was just.
was faded, right?
Yeah, the cover wasn't pretty. It was the worst 9.2 I've ever seen of any book.
I remember that actually.
Yeah, and I was just like, and
It's
even
crazy.
Caro was with me. He talked to me later. He's
He's
like,
like, don't buy that.
I'm glad you didn't buy that book. I was like, oh, thanks. I feel better about it
Yeah.
now. But even then, like, just the value of it, like, I could have sold it for
Mhm.
like what, 12,000,
Yeah.
8,000.
So
Nuts.
even though it's got a 9.2 grade on it, people are picky about what their copies look
No,
like.
you're
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah.
That would have been a hard sell.
Yeah.
It would have.
Like I don't just blindly look at a grade when I buy a book.
I still think
look at
people
the
would have
thing.
bought it.
Yeah, exactly.
Someone
Oh, you have
bought
to
it
be
for sure.
happy
I
with
would've
what you
tripled
buy.
it.
I mean, if you're not happy with what you buy, you're going to want to upgrade it, and you're going to spend more money.
And the
Yeah,
thing was,
exactly.
like, that was a book. Was like, I wasn't really looking to sell that. Like, that was something that I
You want it
wanted.
for
Like, I
yourself.
like the character. It's like, there's stuff that I'm looking to sell and that I see there's value in. And there's stuff that I just want for my personal.
That's
collection.
something to hang on to. That character is never going away.
No, never. I mean, they've killed him twice now, and he's come back.
He's not going anywhere.
I know.
What I'm curious to see, and I haven't paid attention, for the past several weeks, people have been asking for X-Men 101. And the movie, I've heard it didn't do that well.
No, it did not.
Did anyone
Now,
here
you
see
think
it?
that's going to affect the
That's so
price
funny.
I
of
think it's going to cool down. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because I want one, but I'm waiting.
You know what? But people have been looking. That's another book people have always been kind of looking for too.
Yeah.
And like I never picked it up when I was trying to do my full run because I was just like, it seems a little pricey for this book, and it
Yeah.
doesn't make sense to me why it's
Hmm.
like the Phoenix cool, but it's still Jean Grey.
Yeah.
It's just like I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just a kind of an.
I feel that way about
interesting
Spidey 101.
Morbius.
Yeah.
But that's at least
That's
the
been-
first.
I
That's
got
at least
that
a
recently,
different
but it's-
character.
What do you mean, different character?
It's at least a different character. Like it's still Jean Grey.
Oh, yeah, true.
Technically, it isn't the same
yeah, it's an
character.
entity. Yeah, I don't.
It just took her likeness. We didn't find that out until Fantastic Four 286.
Yeah, but I think they retconned that, didn't they?
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
So, what eras do you guys see always holding their value, even if there's like lulls in the market?
What What books?
Yeah, well, like what eras of comics?
Silver
Gold and
Age.
Silver.
Oh yeah, silver,
Silver.
golden.
Yeah, I think it's gold and silver.
Yeah. Do you think because the moderns are so hot right now? Do you think those are going to hold value?
It depends on the book. It depends on the character. If the character has staying power, I think. I mean, most of the books that are worth money is like the problem with a lot of these variants. I'll say the variants no. I think the variant kind of market will die out. It's like, oh well, this is 1 in 7,000. It's like, all right, that's cool. I still don't want it though.
But it's still the same copy
Yeah.
that was
Yeah,
that they did
inside
10,000 copies of.
Inside, there's nothing different on it though.
Well, it's the same thing, manufactured scarcity.
Yeah.
Versus Walking Dead 1, which only has 7,000 copies because that's all that was printed.
But you know, that's even come down in price.
It has, yeah.
A
Hey,
lot.
Matt, did Ozzy ever tell you the story of how I talked him out of buying a Walking Dead?
Oh, he has many times.
He's used an explicitive and then says Alan, and then explicitive again.
I just
Alan.
looked at him and I said, sorry.
You should just buy him one as a friend.
Sure.
Wait till it cools down.
This was like, what is this? It was like 2011. You know, it was a long time. It was a year after the series started. And I'm like, it's an Image comic. It's a black and white image. I'm thinking Spawn 1. 1 million copies of Spawn 1 were printed, okay? Now, Spawn heating up now is crazy. You noticed that, too.
Was this book
Yeah.
a 9.9?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
It looked really nice. Maybe it was a 9.8.
I heard it could have been a 9.9.
I don't know. He has no definitive proof that book. There were only 2 9.9s on the census, and I actually saw one because someone came around trying to sell a 9.9.
Wow.
And I don't think that was the book.
What did Ozzy lose that at?
I don't know. What do you remember? What the guy was asking for?
He wanted 1,000. He would take 900.
I think Ozzy's point was it was definitely a 9. Ozzy felt it without a doubt. It was a 9.9.
Because it capped at like $1,500 to $2,000.
$2,000
right?
it capped
Yeah.
for sure.
So,
But now it's down to $1,200.
Yeah.
Like,
Wow.
you mentioned something pretty cool. What have you seen people trying to sell at shows?
Oh,
Like,
yeah,
what
do
kind of
people come up
cool
to you guys?
stuff do you find like that people try and sell?
Oh,
to you?
this
Like
is
you mentioned a
interesting.
9.9 Walking Dead 1. What else?
Last week at
question, Zach.
what show was last week?
Eternal Con.
Eternal Con. Some guy comes over and says, "Oh, you buy books?" I says, "Yeah." What do you got? He pulls out a FF1 Stanley Signature 6.0. I'm looking around. I'm saying, "What do you want for it?" I won't take anything less than $30,000. I said, "Nobody here is going to buy that for $30,000."
Did you tell him that?
Yeah, I said, "This is the wrong show to sell this at." I said, "Why are you selling it?" "Oh, I had a big fight with my girlfriend, and she's going to destroy it." I said, "Oh, well."
no, that's when you go put it in a safe.
I said,
So you
"Good
go
luck."
for the safety deposit box.
No, he didn't mean she was going to destroy it. She means she probably paid for it, and he's trying to sell it.
Whatever the case was, that was not the
It's
show
not
to
the
sell
right
that
show.
book at. No,
No,
no way.
Definitely not.
I wonder if that was his book at all.
Probably.
Well, I don't know.
That's true.
I mean, I could make assumptions, but I just don't know. He had it, and they say possession is 9/10 of the law, and the fact that he had it, that was the other 9/10.
Oh boy.
What series is that from? Quick.
I don't know.
That was an Archie Bunkerism.
I love that guy. He was a darling man in real life. I just want you to know that
He
was.
was.
A character.
Oh, Carol O'Connor, fantastic. Look, we don't need no alternatives. All we need is something else to do. My favorite is he goes, "Don't listen to the college boy, because number one, he's unemployed, and two, he don't work."
He was great. I'm gonna go home and watch that.
Hey, we made another segue.
Yeah, nice.
All right, so I think we should just probably get into the games at this point, right? The
Yeah.
game segment, and then we'll do some closing
Yeah.
stuff.
We have a little game segment.
Well,
between-
before we do that, I
Yeah.
just wanted to make mention. You mentioned that working the shows. Now, currently, who I'm working with, I'm sort of dealing in more of the newer books, and I see that people are going nuts over Immortal Hulk. That's huge.
Really
Yeah.
Huge.
interesting.
I see that
Mortal
all
Hulk,
over Facebook.
huge.
I have every issue. I don't understand what the hype is. Actually, that's a lie. I sold the first one at the last show we did.
Did you read it?
No.
Ah, so the series is actually really cool.
I heard
Oh yeah.
I also told you this came out. The series is less than a year old, and I'm
Yeah,
a year behind. So I'm actually reading a lot of my books digitally, so I
Okay.
buy stuff that I like the look of, not always
Covers,
necessarily and the books I'm reading, like Spider-Man, I'm gonna.
It's a
continue to buy
dynamite
that.
cover, babe.
It's a dynamite cover, babe. You have to tell him about this. I want him to listen.
I should reach out to
Yeah.
John.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, segue.
Yeah.
On the
Um,
segue.
Yeah, but no, there's a lot of hot modern books. You're not wrong.
Spawn is like killing now, especially the homage covers.
I mean, the
Yep.
cover, and that's mostly what it
look-
is. Those covers are amazing.
What
They
was-
just had, they had an error one recently too, right?
They did.
Where some of the book was printed in black and white, and some of it was color
Yes.
mistakenly. Yeah, I have one of those too.
What was the issue you told me about before to look out for? Spawn issue? That's like really hot right now.
240 is
240?
is a hot book.
Why is it hot?
I don't know.
I've randomly been trying to get the Angela cover. I just want
It's
a
probably
a
the-
UPC Angela cover 9/8. That's all.
Spawn 9?
Yeah.
Huh.
I love
Yeah,
that.
a lot
I
of
love
those
her
books, the
in
print
that
run
cover.
was pretty low.
Oh yeah, even in the 90s.
No.
Oh, the late.
The
Like,
later ones, like the 150 and up, I think.
yeah, mid 100s and higher, like the print runs are stupid low.
See, I know modern stuff a little bit, sort of here and there.
Yeah, you do.
You know plenty. Don't sell yourself short. You know you do.
I just think I had the chance of buying a couple of Spider-Verses for cheap, and I said, nah, again, with like The Walking Dead.
Yeah.
I mean, I can get one now at a
Yeah.
reasonable price, but I don't know.
Listen, if it's not something you're looking to collect, I mean, like how you don't really sell that often either, right? You do occasionally, but most of the buying you're doing is for your personal collection,
Yeah.
correct? So I mean, if it's not something you're looking to keep,
Oh, I'm
you-
buying a
you're
lot
not
of
really
doubles and triples
losing
too,
out.
to sort of trade bait.
Yeah.
well, I mean, and that might not
I
be a bad
benefit
idea
greatly
to
from
do
that.
stuff like that too. You've been what?
I benefit greatly from that.
Yeah, we made a couple of deals in the
Yeah,
past.
yeah.
I'm just gonna double check that you have my number too. All right.
Shall we go into
let's
the-
get into this game?
Yeah. So it's gonna be you versus Zach. Alan
Uh-oh.
versus
Oh,
Zach.
this is called Beat a Geek, by the way.
Yeah.
Beat a geek.
Do you want to ask
They're,
questions?
they're all geeks here. Oh, should I do it?
There you go.
I don't know. I don't have my reading glasses. I'll just put my sunglasses on.
We really should come
Did
up
you
with
check these
like a
before?
Check
game,
them for
game show music to go
Yeah,
into
we,
this.
I'll
have,
get them.
We have a guy.
check
doing
them
it.
for correct.
we got a guy for that. All right. So our guest usually goes first, and so just how are we doing this?
4 out of 7.
4 out of 7.
Yeah.
What
4 out of
if
7.
no one gets the question right?
Then whoever gets the most.
Okay. All right, we're gonna figure it out on the way. Sorry, I was busy at work. I wasn't able to iron out the details with Mr. Toy Story here.
Yeah, 4 out of 7.
All right,
I'm keeping score.
Mr. Allen, your question, sir. What was the first comic book convention? What is considered at least the first comic book convention?
The first comic book convention.
Yeah.
No idea.
Sorry.
It falls to Zach.
All right, Mr. Bojo. Who is this Zach you speak of?
Yeah, true.
Same guy. I don't know what the name it was, but I feel like it's one of those Phil Seuling shows in the city, like the Phil Seuling convention in New York City. I don't know what they were called though.
Okay, so that's still the wrong answer.
That's fine.
I think you were on the right track. Did he do this show? Do we know?
I don't know.
No.
Yeah,
So it was called New York Comic Con, 1965.
yeah.
it
Jim
was
knew this, and we
I
didn't.
knew this.
COMICON.
How did you know this?
Never would have guessed.
I knew that.
Random
it was just
thing in
random
your
thing
memory?
that I knew.
Never would have guessed.
Yeah, I was told I was wrong, but I was right.
Well, no, because the spelling, I was mistaken by your spelling.
I
It's
don't
fine.
think Phil Seuling was doing that.
No.
No.
No, I don't think.
65, you said?
He was late.
Yeah,
60
1965.
65.
Later, yeah.
Interesting.
All right, back to Alan. What book is generally considered the start of the Silver Age, and what year did it come out? Are you fucking?
Dropping the F bombs.
Come on, that's is that a trick question?
Nope.
No, I don't know who added this. but
Start of the Silver Age,
What do you mean?
1956, Showcase 4.
Very
Yeah.
good.
Who put this question in there?
Me, why?
You know he has this.
How am I know he's gonna? It's not gonna go to Zach.
Yes, I have the book also. So what?
All right.
You
so
always yell at me that my questions are too
That's
hard.
one.
Would you like to know what I paid for that book?
Yes.
Yes.
That was an inch. Well, we're still doing the game, but this is interesting.
Is this 5-5?
No,
Is
it's
that-
actually 3-5.
Okay.
But
That's a hard book to get.
it was sort of a cash labor deal. I had to do. I had to work a whole weekend. It was a C2E2 weekend for free. My meals and alcohol were optional. I was treated to that, and I had to pay, I think, $1,500.
Wow.
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 Very nice.
That's pretty sweet.
I hate
So,
all the
and that
deals
was,
you get
I think that was 2010.
Wow.
Jeez. just in case anyone doesn't know what a Showcase 4 is, it is the first appearance of the Barry Allen Flash.
Yeah.
There's a Golden Age Flash as well. That's not that book. Do you have that one? The Golden Age Flash?
All Flash Comics #1.
No, but I have the Poor Man's Flash Comics
Ooh.
#1, which is All Flash Quarterly.
Hey.
Okay.
Very cool cover.
That's a very cool cover. You think about it. He's got that little weird pose. It's
You don't care for it?
well, that would go very well with the Pride weekend, I believe. Just that
Probably.
little pose is sort of a little flamboyant. I think.
We support every mind of phrase of thought.
But for a superhero, I just think they were conveying it could have been, I don't know. I think, in the
all right, let's move on.
in
from
the,
this.
in the intolerant 40s, I think.
All right.
Wasn't a good selling point.
Zach, your question.
Mhm.
Who is the firstborn child of Reed and Sue Richards?
That's Franklin Richards.
All right.
Too easy. Come on.
Yeah, that was my
Fantastic
question.
Four.
Would you have
Fantastic
known
Four
that?
Annual #6.
Yeah, I do.
You
That was
would've known.
annual, right?
Yeah, Fantastic Four Annual #6.
Yes.
First appearance of Nihilus as well, I
All right.
believe.
Wow.
Oh,
We're
damn,
gonna-
I have that.
We're going to go back to Alan.
You can also mix up the questions,
No, that's not fair. That goes against the spirit of the game. What is the first comic appearance of Kryptonite?
Good question.
Yeah, this is my question. You can tell.
Of course,
a
it's
one.
good.
Would you like to take a stab at this, Zach?
I'm going to throw out a random number in a minute. So just, you do your wrong random number. I'll do my wrong random number.
Was it an adventure comic?
No.
Oh, then I don't know.
Okay.
Zach?
Obviously, it's Action Comics #252.
Nope.
I mean, I obviously did not know that.
Superman #61.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So, if I'm correct, Kryptonite first appeared on the radio serial, right?
It did in comics. This is the first appearance.
Yeah. I like the first appearance of random objects like that, like
yeah.
the Batarang. and
I
all
was
that.
like, there was too many like characters, and I
Yeah.
feel like they
First
probably would've known all
Adamantium
of them.
Avenger 66, just saying.
Yeah.
Now, would a CGC label list that, or
I
would they
Oh, for
think so,
sure.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
first Kryptonite?
Kryptonite, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
third-party
something
grading
that big, I
company
feel like.
label.
I think they list like Batarang and stuff.
Yeah.
Cheers.
We're back to Alan now, right?
Mm-hmm.
What was the first comic book to sell for over $1 million?
That's an interesting.
Silver or gold?
That's not part of the question.
Well, I do know that a 9.6 AF-15 sold for 1.1 million. I don't know if that would be it.
You're correct.
Okay,
That's the
there you
first
go.
one to sell for over.
You were
$1
shaking your
million
head.
in 2011.
What's
first
up, Zach?
comic.
What's up? What's up? What's up?
Before that,
There you go.
at least according to my research, the highest paid for a comic was somewhere in the 200,000s.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say that that wasn't paid
Shenanigans.
for in a, I think it was a trade.
It was a private transaction.
It was I know it was a private transaction where I think somebody traded quote unquote $1 million worth of comics for that book. But
Mm,
I don't actually think it was a stunt.
Okay.
I'm just saying. I'm just saying.
So you call it
Actually
shenanigans.
paying money for a book. I think it was the Action one, although I don't actually know.
All right. We're
I'll
gonna
fact
go,
check
we're
that.
gonna go with what.
No,
this guy
go
thinks.
with the AF-15 if that's what you found on your research.
All right.
Should we go to the replay?
No, it
No,
matter.
it doesn't matter. It's all good. It's all good.
He got what he thought it was.
Yeah.
All right, Zach, you're up.
Mhm.
What did the acronym SHIELD originally stand for when it first appeared in Strange Tales 135?
Glad I'm not playing this.
We upped the level of the difficulty for these two.
You're killing me here.
Yeah, I don't know what the S stands for. This is the something hazard and
We're gonna give
intelligence.
you six.
Uh,
One.
All right. All right, Alan. Do you have the answer?
I'm gonna just drink my beer.
All right. The answer was Supreme Headquarters International Espionage and Law Enforcement 8 Division.
Huh.
Law Enforcement, one word.
But that wasn't.
Dash.
What was
That's
it?
not the final
It was
acronym,
hyphen.
right?
Hmm?
That's not the
No,
current.
that's not the current. So
Yeah.
this
It's like
when it
strategic-
first appeared.
Strategic.
This is what it was
hazard,
called, yeah.
intelligence,
in
espionage.
Strange Tales 135. This was the first
What was-
appearance of Shield. It was a reference to that.
What was the first? What was the S?
It was Supreme
Supreme.
Headquarters
Interesting.
International Espionage and Law Enforcement Division.
Can we go back to talking about pedigrees?
Let's continue the content.
Okay.
We're back to Alan, right?
Yep.
Who is Etrigan's alter ego?
Dead air. I don't want dead
Silence tells it all.
air. Too much silence.
So that was Alan. That was your question. Do you have an answer?
It's Jason Blood.
Correct, sir.
Ooh,
All
Zach
right,
got that.
So that's Zach.
Put one down for
Nice.
Zach.
I got the showcase for.
Okay, so this is a last question we
I don't
have.
like this game.
What are the only 3 pedigrees to contain an Action Comics 1?
Ooh. Okay, definitely the Mile Highs. I know the Denver collection was all ones. Was there an Action 1 in the Denver collection?
What was the Denver collection called?
Is that the name of the pedigree?
It was the Denver collection, but they were all number 1s, I believe. And I don't know if an Action 1 was part of that.
There's 3 pedigrees that contained an Action 1.
Okay, so I'm just going to take a stab at this. I think the Denvers, the Mile Highs, and the Allentowns.
I don't think so. Do you know if these have another name?
No. It's Mile High.
Whoop,
I'm
whoop,
sorry.
whoop.
I'm so sorry.
Come on, stop looking.
Well,
at
we
your
all
phone.
know Mile High was.
I'm sorry. I'm distracted.
All right. Do you know the other 2? Mile High.
I can't name 2 other pedigrees aside from Mile High. Like,
Alright,
you
so
really
it's a moot
think?
point.
All right. So they were, according to his research, which we've learned may be shoddy just recently. Mile High,
Not doing anything
Lamont Larson,
Oh, the
and
Larsons,
Kansas
okay.
City are the 3.
I didn't know about the Kansas City.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Kansas City.
Huh.
All right. So are they tied?
They're tied.
2
Okay.
apiece.
No, wait. Oh, yeah.
I think we should arm wrestle.
All right.
Yeah.
Hold
Arm
on.
wrestle.
I'm going to lose that real
I
fast.
actually
I could
have-
cook up some hot dogs.
I have
Do
some-
that.
I have-
Yo, I would do that.
I have some backup questions.
Oh,
Oh, do
he's
you?
walking away.
Uh-oh.
I have them in my-
Apparently, we're going to have some backup
Wow,
questions.
he's got to walk away to get that.
So I'm going to be honest. I assumed that there would be some questions about comic book grades in this. Between Alan and me, I just assumed someone should be like, "Can you tell me what a 5.5 is?" But apparently not.
That's not a question you can ask because it's ambiguous.
It's not ambiguous. It's a fine minus.
oh, that's what you were thinking.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, jeez. Hold on a second here.
But
We're-
maybe you
we're-
show
we're-
us
We're just gonna find one.
some pictures of
I-
books and
I
be like,
have
"Hey, tell us
questions
what the
here.
grade is." Based on the cover.
Well, this is a fine minus right here.
See, exactly. That's a
Can I see
fine
that again?
minus.
Because I had to walk away when you were talking about this, and this is just absolutely beautiful.
So in the middle of the game, Alan's just handed over the Strange Tales copy that he
Yes.
brought for the IRS collection here
JJ didn't
to
get to see
JJ.
it. This is just beautiful.
Meanwhile, Tess is furiously scrolling.
All right. Here we go.
Okay, go for it.
All right. Who was the last person to get it? All right. So back to you.
Back to Alan.
Back to Alan.
Alan. What is Professor X's middle name?
Waldo.
What'd you say?
Waldo.
Zach?
Edward.
Francis.
Oh.
Oh, gosh, you guys are making me waste another question. All right.
Yes.
Fine. Zach
should've known that.
Zach may nail you here, but in Batman Begins, what was used to release Scarecrow's fear toxin into the city? Do you know, Alan?
Really?
He's chomping at the bit, so he knows for sure.
I don't know.
Yeah, you could say it.
I don't. I it's. We talk about like the abstract, or we talk about like the
I'm
specific.
talking about the device. Come on, you don't know this? I would have known this off the top of my head.
No, I mean it was like a microwave to make steam. I don't know.
I'm gonna take that. You won.
Microwave emitter.
I was waiting
Microwave
for a
emitter?
question like who were the two actors that played Captain Marvel in the old Shazam series from 1973 and 74?
He was born 30 years after that show.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah, it was the Wayne Enterprises microwave emitter.
A microwave emitter.
Like the one that they just lost.
Yeah. All right.
I didn't know the word emitter. I'm sorry.
I'm really surprised Zach kind of won that. But
Well, he would have won anyway because I admit defeat. My research was wrong.
yes. So
It was
turns
the
out-
first. It was the first Silver Age comic to sell for over $1 million.
Okay.
That one.
The first comic to sell for $1 million was that the
But it
9-0?
was for cash.
it-
It was not for trade.
Really?
Yeah. No, it was
It was a
actually
private transaction
Detective
for-
27.
1 year
Really?
earlier.
Yeah. In 2010.
So I think it was the Detective 27 sold. It was I don't remember if it was Action 1 or Detective 27. If my memory serves me correctly, it was the 27 sold for $1 million, and then I think like the Action 1 sold for like 1.1 or 1.2 mil, and then
It was
like
1.1.
yeah, and then that transaction with the Amazing Spidey happened, and I was just like, that seems wrong. That's just like there's no reason that book
It's a
should have sold.
96. Might be the highest copy out there. It is the highest copy out there, right?
I don't think there's a 9.8.
It just seems.
There's not an AF-15.
Yeah.
9.6 is the highest
Spider-Man is the biggest thing that Marvel has.
yeah, but $1 million.
Yeah, just because you don't want to spend it doesn't mean the rest of us won't.
I don't have
All
$1
right.
million bucks.
Yeah.
All right. So
Now, do you want to talk about pedigrees again?
he
copy.
Toy Story suspended until further notice. And, all right, Alan, we're gonna close out here. So what we kind of are trying out is kind of like our key hunts. Like, what are we hunting down? Any books we're looking for? Today we're gonna do what you're looking for. Anything out there that's tickling your fancy? Something that our listeners out there should reach out to us and say, "Hey, we got this book Alan wants."
I would love to pick up an X-Men 1, but I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon.
Do you have a minimum grade you want?
It's got to be a nice, like a 6.0-ish or a nice 5.5.
Solid book. Solid book. Yeah, it's probably as popular as the giant size X-Men right now, right?
I'd say a little bit less so, honestly.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, because
People are all over giant size.
those
right now.
characters were awful in the original X-Men.
Oh, yeah, that too.
Yeah.
I'll give you that.
All right. So I guess that's kind of it to close out.
You know, I'm gonna just go back to current news. I mean, we didn't bring up this, and I'm not sure how big deal it is to you guys, but you know, the big news out of DC this week was the closing of Vertigo.
Oh my God! How did we not touch on
I don't know
that?
how we.
I didn't see that. Really?
I don't.
Seriously?
I
No,
don't
I
know
did
how
not.
we missed that. So after 19 years they've been around, 26
29
years,
years?
something like that. They're no more.
Really?
So they're being roped. They're being actually brought into the DC under the DC title now.
So they're what they did is, since you haven't heard the news, they folded all of the imprints basically. So like DC Zoom, DC Inc., which were like the kids line, it's now just under DC Kids.
DC Kids.
Then there's just DC for the regular titles, the main universe titles, and anything that would have been like a Vertigo-esque title is going to be folded into DC Black Label.
So stuff like the Sandman and the Preacher and all that.
Well, is that why they did
Swamp Thing.
They just released, I think, next Wednesday, the Joker book, the Lee Bermejo.
That
and,
was actually this week.
Oh,
That
it
was
this-
Batman Damn #3 came out
Yeah,
this
that
week.
came out.
No,
That
no,
came
no,
out
no,
this
no.
week.
No,
Yeah.
no, not that one.
Lee
The
Bermejo's
Joker
Joker.
Tiger. The Joker, the Joker that book that came out a while
Oh.
ago.
Azarello?
They're re-releasing that next week under the Black Label title.
So that actually makes
Trade paperback.
100% sense. I haven't read it, but I read a synopsis of the most recent Batman Damned issue. It seems like it takes place directly after Joker, the graphic novel.
I'll be honest, I did hear about this. It wasn't that big a deal to me because I've never read any Vertigo titles. It makes sense why they would do it is because I think, at least right now, people don't know what Vertigo is. They don't know it's associated with DC. Like, it's kind of like standing out there. It's kind of so their idea was kind of trying to be an Image Comics, but still under the DC umbrella, correct?
So Vertigo started off as creator-owned books. Some of it was where the mature line of comics like kind of started, like some of the more mature titles. Swamp Thing wound up there. Hellblazer wound up there.
Preacher.
You know, Preacher absolutely was underneath there. It was anything that, like, you know, I guess DC saw like as being a good property, as a good title, getting some really good creators, you know, underneath their publishing umbrella. There's been some great Vertigo books, and I think that there was they redid the creator agreements a few years back, and it really took the kind of the teeth out of what the creators could accomplish. You know, I think there was a matter of like optioning rights for movies or something along those lines, or it wasn't like full creative ownership on the titles. So you didn't see as much come out that was, I don't know, as big as something like as Preacher or as Why the Last Man. I think Why the Last Man was probably the last big. Why the Last Man was a pretty big title. Jeff Lemire cut his teeth on Sweet Tooth. That was a recent good Vertigo book, but that also probably ended in 2010, 2011. Brian Wood did Northlanders. Scalped by Jason Aaron and R.M. Guerra is like unbelievably good. If you haven't read that, read it.
Was Fables on Vertigo?
Fables was probably the last major Vertigo book before.
I just saw the Scalp one last week.
Oh, really?
Scalped is a fantastic series if you haven't read. I don't know if it's going to be a TV series or not, but it's just begging to be.
And there was a lot of TV series that came out of the Vertigo books.
Absolutely.
Lucifer, I mean, that was one, and
That's a spin-off.
iZombie was another one.
Oh my god, I forgot about iZombie.
I mean,
I had a whole run of that.
Some big,
Preacher came out.
That was great.
Preacher came
Why
out.
the Last Man's coming out.
Some big. I mean, these are pretty big books too. I mean, they sold for some money. I thought.
I mean, listen, you know, you figure I'm not going to be the one to stand up for the big, you know, corporation, but if you were losing out, if you were kind of like pushing these books out and not seeing the revenue on the backside from it and just from the books, it's like you might want to rearrange, you know, the deal as well.
The problem is Image Comics was out Vertigoing Vertigo.
Oh, yeah.
So where do you go from there?
Yeah.
There's they just did another announcement, which I read this morning, I think, that Joe Hill is going to have his own little pop-up line under DC Black Label called Hill Street Comics or Hill Comics or something like that. Joe Hill is a horror writer. Also happens to be the son of Stephen King, although he publishes under Joe Hill because he didn't want the King name to kind of.
That's not Stephen King's pen name. That's his actual name?
No. Stephen King's pen name was Richard Bachman.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
No, Joe Hill is Stephen King's son, and his books are fantastic.
No, I understood what you're saying. I was saying that wasn't a pen
No,
name.
no,
Stephen
no,
King
no,
is
no,
his
no,
actual
no.
name?
It is.
Yes, Stephen King is his real name.
He wrote Nosferatu, right?
Yeah, he wrote Nosferatu. He wrote one of my all-time favorite horror books, Heart Shaped Box. Like if you haven't read Heart Shaped Box,
That's a good.
amazing.
Awesome. Yes.
So he's going to have his own little pop-up line of horror comics, and I read the synopses of each. And if you ask me what they are right now, I don't know. I can't tell you exactly titles and da-da-da. But like all of them sounded cool. Like all of them sounded cool.
Okay.
If they're done well, I might be buying more books again.
Nice.
There you go.
Maybe I'll start
But yeah,
buying
I
books.
figured we should have mentioned.
No,
that.
it's
No,
a
good.
fantastic thing to point
that was
out.
definitely a good bring up.
Awesome.
All right, so I guess in terms of announcements, we're JJ and I are going to be heading to New Jersey Fan Fest tomorrow.
Fan Fest. Yep.
Yeah, we're going to check that show out. Well, this would have already happened, so
That's
don't
all
come
right.
see us.
And where are you going yesterday?
Yesterday, I would have gone to Garden State Comic Fest, and the only reason I'm going to New Jersey twice, and nothing against people who live in New Jersey, I just don't care for it personally. Skeletor is going to be at Garden State Comic Fest. I don't even know what else is going on there. I don't know if other people are going to be there, but Alan Oppenheimer, the voice of Skeletor from Filmation, is going to be there, and I'm going to go. I'm going to get something signed.
Are you going to be in there for literally like 5 minutes?
Probably.
Yeah.
I'm not looking to buy any books right now.
You gonna bring your DC Presents 47 there?
Is it 47?
48, 47, 49, somewhere in
He-Man?
there. Yeah.
47.
Yay!
So
Ding,
I
ding,
have
ding.
that signed by Dolph Lundgren. And I don't think I'm gonna crack it again.
All right, that makes sense.
But yeah, it's pretty cool. I'm gonna probably. I think I just got one of those Super 7 figures.
Okay.
The Skeletor ones. I got the He-Man and the Skeletor. The ones that look like them from the Filmation series, but like modernized.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm probably just gonna have them sign that, and maybe some other cool surprise stuff that I'm not gonna mention.
Yeah, Yeah, so FanFest will be kind of cool. It's more of like a walker stock.
Yeah,
like
I mean, I'm kind of going because Danielle Panabaker.
Yeah.
Like one of my favorite characters from Flash, which I'm trying to catch up on now, and it's not as good as when it first started.
It's hard to catch up with the Flash.
Yeah, he's always just ahead of me.
And I'm going to be bringing my Star Wars poster.
Yeah,
to
which
get
guy's
signed.
there?
Oh, she.
I'm
It's
sorry.
Kaylee Fleming. She was actually played young Rey in
the little girl?
The little girl. She's actually in Walking Dead. She actually plays Judith in The Walking
Yes.
Dead.
Yes.
But she was also young Rey in The Force Awakens. So
How old is she?
She's
young, right?
like
7 or
seven,
She's
something.
8.
signing?
She's signing. Yeah.
Wow.
So
No,
I
they
figured
did some strange things to it.
I'm gonna
Yeah,
get
they're
her.
like 14.
I don't think she's this young.
No,
think they're
she's
older,
young.
dude.
Is she really?
She's young.
I think she might be like 10 or 12.
I
That's
would.
young.
I don't know.
I would think she's young.
Huh.
So yeah,
She's
she's
7.
she's going to. Yeah, I was there. I think she's 7. I'm gonna get her to sign my Star Wars poster.
That's really cool.
And who's
So-
the other person?
It's a Walking Dead. My wife wants.
So it's not 2 Star Wars people.
No, just him.
Okay.
Austin Amilo.
Who's he play?
Oh, he's Dwight from Walking Dead.
Dwight. Yeah, Dwight.
Hmm.
Huh.
My
Okay.
wife is a big fan of him, so she wants his autograph.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to briefly check these shows out. I think Chris
Different
Campana
shows.
is going to be at Garden State on Sunday
cool.
too. There's a
And
cool
Billy
guy.
Tucci will be there too.
Oh yeah, he will. From Cape Justice, I have kind of a project that I'm working on with him that we're going to kind of be announcing at a later date that I just want to talk to him about. But yeah, just kind of catching up with people, meeting those like celebrities that we mentioned. And that's kind of it. Anything else going
Very
on?
nice. I think that's it.
Just one thing I want to put out there. We have mentioned that we're going to do a book club. It's probably going to be on Twitch. We're going to try and get it interactive. Initially, we were shooting for July. I think it's probably more likely that you're going to hear more news about
August.
that launching in August. So just kind of bear with us. We're really excited about that. We haven't decided officially on the book yet either. That'll also be announced soon, but we're really looking forward to doing that. And again, we can't tell you enough. If you want to really keep up with us, follow us on social media. If you ever want to reach out to us like outside of social media, requests at licomicguys.com is a great way to interact with us. And any other ways you guys can?
No,
think?
just social.
Instagram.
Yeah,
Facebook,
comment
Instagram.
Instagram.
A book club, huh?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Be interested in that?
like my detention days.
Oh well, it would be more about reading the same book and kind of discussing
Oh, okay.
it. Yeah, just
And we're gonna do it live. So
Yeah.
we're gonna go live doing
Yeah.
it. So it's gonna be interesting.
The teacher in me loves the fact that something good came out of detention.
Yeah.
I'm just saying. For any of my students listening out there, just saying.
It's funny. Remember I mentioned one of the kids was sketching a cover. Did I mention that?
Yeah,
you did.
One of the kids was sketching a cover. He turned out to be like a world-renowned blues musician.
Really?
Yeah, he's a very
Wow.
famous blues guitarist.
I guess it's good he
Yeah.
stopped drawing. Cool. Oh, by the way, I don't think I mentioned it again at licomicguys.com at licomicguys
Yep.
across all social media.
Yep.
Alan, how would you like people to get in touch with you?
Don't.
Alan,
find
knew
you.
you were gonna say that. I knew it.
Alan, you know how many more books we could get you in contact with if you got into social media?
It's
You've
the
been
hunt
saying
that's
that you
fun.
should. Yeah, you've
Yeah.
been saying
Oh,
that you
it's
should get
always
into
the
Facebook
hunt.
stuff.
All right. Well, as usual, guys, until next time.
Don't feed the geeks!